Oh, oh, what's up? Alright, tonight's gonna be a little different. It's gonna be mostly just kind of learning shit for the new season of Path of Exile coming out Friday. Oh, I should put... When is it? It is Friday. These are some other shit I gotta do. So what we're gonna do is do a little bit of research into... I totally just been zonked out. I haven't been feeling well too recently, so it would just be a nice relaxing night of just kind of watching content and shit and gathering some information about the new season. There are some league mechanics that I don't know that I think are in this season, so we'll have to figure that stuff out. I don't know what build I'm gonna do. I don't think I'm gonna do another bow build. Kind of want to change it up, do maybe something a little different. I haven't decided yet, but we will take a look. And we'll just poke around YouTube and see what's kind of going on there and shit. But the Affliction League... The release date is going to be December 8th. Oh yeah, American numbers 12/08/23 and 12/13/23 for console. I'm not gonna worry about that. Let's pause the music. Let's pause the music. I really haven't watched too much. I watched some of Zizern's videos. Oh, fucking volume. Sorry. Oh, I thought this was the reveal video. Where's the reveal video? Hey, there I am. Where's like the official... reveal? Content reveal.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. Thanks for joining us for today's Path of Exile livestream. We have a packed show today, with announcements for Path of Exile 2, as well as the exclusive unveiling of Path of Exile Affliction, which launches on December 8th on PC and Mac, and on December 13th on console. Twitch drops are enabled on today's livestream, so make sure you follow the instructions below in order to claim your Huntsman wings. We'll start with Path of Exile 2, where Jonathan will walk you through our latest announcements. Mark will then take you on a deep dive into the new Path of Exile Affliction Challenge League, which launches in 1 week. He'll cover the league mechanics,
A Path of Exile
rewards,
2 update.
some new content we're adding to the core Path of Exile experience, and some large metagame changes. I'll then show you our annual core supporter packs, and we'll head into our live Q&A session where Ziggy D will ask us your questions from
Give us the fucking money,
After the
bitches.
livestream, we'll drop the full patch notes. I'd like to hand over to Jonathan Rogers, Game Director of Path of Exile 2.
Hey guys, it's been a few months since we introduced you to the Druid in Path of Exile 2, but one of the things that we're really focusing on now is how varied each of the classes feels to play. The Monk darts around quickly from enemy to enemy, building and unleashing combos. If he doesn't stay in combat, he loses momentum and has to build it up again. The warrior, on the other hand, is like a slow but unstoppable freight train. A warrior commits to big attacks and relies on stunning his enemies to stay safe in the thick of combat. When an opening presents itself, a warrior can use even larger attacks to demolish his enemies.
They're like streamlining the
Huntress
classes.
seamlessly moves from melee to ranged combat and back. The true damage potential of the Huntress is only unlocked when you learn to combine ranged and melee abilities together. And then there are the spellcasters. The sorceress is a pure caster who much prefers to stay at range and drop powerful spells on her foes. If she finds herself surrounded by enemies, she would rather use an ability to escape than to take them on directly.
I'd rather fight at range while she goes in and casts Frost Nova.
The druid is also a spellcaster, but unlike the sorceress, he uses his spells as a means to support his melee abilities. And by melee abilities, we mean he can turn into a giant animal and rip his enemies to pieces.
Are you the same animal, but a different beast? The fuck does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
Each of these classes feels extremely different to play, but we want to go even further. It's time to check out the mercenary.
There's not a job out there I won't take, so long as the pay's good and a crossbow can solve it.
Crossbow looked cool. It's like shooting a shotgun, right? Yeah, that's fucking cool. Reminds me kind of like Demon Hunter a little bit.
I'll take them all down, one bolt at a time.
When thinking about each new class, we really try to think about how we can make combat feel different from all the others. For the mercenary, that difference is the crossbow. A crossbow is fundamentally different than a regular bow because it fires instantly instead of needing to be drawn back. This means that you need immediate feedback.
How,
the fire
though?
button should make the character shoot instantly, just like in a shooter. As soon as we experienced that, we realized that there are a lot of design lessons to learn from shooters, and so we fully embraced them. In Path of Exile 2, we have crossbows that work like sniper rifles, shotguns, and assault rifles.
Jesus, it's an 8
But in order to
weapon
really get
slot.
shooter-like gameplay, we wanted to go further. In Path of Exile 2, we now support WASD movement. You can now walk around in any direction independent of aiming. In fact, if this is your preferred method of gameplay, you can use it on any class, regardless of what weapon type you're using. You can change between click to move or WASD at any time.
Oh wait,
You can only hold 2 crossbows at a time, but Path of Exile 2 is all
I just fucking realized that he's moving while shooting.
about interesting combinations of abilities, and this is where ammo
He's
skills come.
strafing and shit.
This is a burst shot crossbow.
Ah.
And right now I have armor piercing ammo equipped, which makes it very effective when facing a group of enemies, since it pierces right through them.
Bloody horrors!
But there are other ammos too.
Like, why the fuck do you
For a
want
bigger
WSD
single
movement?
target, it might be a good idea to switch to incendiary. The more projectiles hit the target, the stronger the ignite, so you'll want to get up nice, close and personal with this one. If you have a bunch of targets running at you, you might want to slow them down. In this case, you could switch to permafrost burst shot. Shooting a bunch of smaller enemies at range will chill them, and potentially even freeze them in place. Once you have some frozen enemies though, you can switch back to armor piercing. Shooting a frozen enemy with armor piercing burst shot will explode the ice, doing a huge amount of damage to all nearby enemies.
Oh, he almost died.
Another feature crossbows have is attachments. This is a grenade launcher. As you can see, when I equip it, it appears on the underside of the crossbow. These attachments are just like skill gems, so you effectively get extra skill slots, and you can augment these with support gems, just like regular skills.
Fire in the hole!
These grenades take a while to explode, so it's a good idea to pair them with some kind of crowd control, like permafrost burst shot. We have other grenades too though. This attachment is a flash grenade. It does barely any damage, but it does a huge amount of stun. It can be a great opener before you run into
didn't.
combat. Now, here's another attachment, an oil grenade. Firing one of these grenades coats the ground and nearby enemies in oil. Oil slows enemies down, so it's another useful crowd control mechanic.
And can you set it on fire? Probably.
Now, another thing that oil can do is be set on fire.
Ah.
Any burning enemy or explosion will ignite the oil, causing extra burning damage.
Ah.
One of the problems with burst shot crossbows is that each pellet doesn't do much damage individually. This means that if enemies have armor, then it will be very effective preventing that damage. But thankfully, you can equip an additional crossbow in your second weapon set to deal with the weaknesses of your primary weapon. This is a rapid shot crossbow. Rapid shot is great for closing on enemies because you can shoot while running. In Path of Exile 2, we now have the ability to allow you to use some skills while moving. Being able to create skills like this opens up a lot of new design space and allows us to really increase the pace of combat.
Take them bitches.
The armor-piercing version of Rapid Shot slowly erodes a monster's armor. Once the armor is fully broken, you can easily switch back to Burst Shot to deal much more damage. Being able to run while shooting with Rapid Shot is also great for when you want to perform a fighting retreat.
Reload!
Using permafrost ammo with Rapid Shot is also useful if you need to retreat. When you shoot the ground, it creates ice crystals. If you draw monsters back over these crystals, they explode, chilling the monsters. It's great if you want to set up a safe zone before pulling the next pack. Slowing enemies down can come in handy if you want to use the incendiary version of Rapid Shot. Using this skill requires that you charge up a little bit before it fires, but as it continues to heat up, it will do more and more damage. It has a really large clip size, so you can just keep firing and firing with it. But the other really useful feature is that when the crossbow is heated up, it adds extra fire damage to any grenade that you launch.
Man, those grenades take a while to blow
Now,
up,
I've been
huh?
using explosive grenades here, but it will work equally as well with flash or oil grenades too. If you use it with oil grenades, the oil will catch fire immediately.
There you go.
Another crossbow type that you can find is Power Shot. This one works just like a classic sniper rifle. Use it with armor-piercing ammo and it will penetrate armor on targets, so it's a good idea to use when something's really tough.
Back down or die!
Now this skill has another interesting interaction with armor break. If an enemy has its armor broken, then your Power Shot hits a weak spot and does a huge amount of single target damage, with a bunch of extra stun for good measure.
Those ranged mobs, man, they're fucking them up. He's getting down to like 20%
Now,
health
the
every time he
incendiary
gets
version of
hit.
Power Shot is more like a rocket launcher. It does a big explosive blast at a distance.
Reminds me the scoundrel like
One of
NPC
the
from
really useful
D3.
features of this version is that you can explode any grenades that happen to be on the ground.
But like you get to play him now. It's kind of cool. Oh shit, my lights.
This combo also works really well with Incendiary Rapid Shot. I'm going to charge up the heat on my crossbow, shoot out a bunch of grenades, and then start the fireworks with a Power Shot. ice version of Power Shot creates frost walls at a distance. This is great for crowd controlling monsters in tight passages. The wall segments have other uses too. If they get destroyed by monsters, then they will explode, doing a small amount of damage.
Block him in!
Now, remember that burst shot combo with frozen enemies we did earlier? That works with ice walls too. Let's put burst shot back on. Now I can fill up this area with ice walls, then shoot them with armor-piercing burst shot for a huge amount of damage.
I know this is probably just like to display the class mechanics and shit, but
Alright, it's time to face the boss for
seems
this
a
area.
little clunky.
Let's see how we fare against her with all the skills I've shown you so far.
damn, look at them titties. The belly.
Stay still, the mother! No, 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 no!
Oh, Jesus Christ. What the fuck? Little Binding of Isaac popped out.
Rapid fire!
Holy shit, that thing's got a lot of health. You better put up those fucking walls, dude. Oh, that was nice.
Piercing shot!
Oh.
What is going on in this godforsaken
Should be alright.
And that's the Mercenary. It feels totally different than anything we've made before, and shows you the range of what's possible in Path of Exile 2.
What the fucking fuck was that thing? I have a nightmare about that.
We're going to be showing off a lot more about Path of Exile 2 as we approach its beta, but in the meantime we've got a Path of Exile 1 expansion coming out next week. I'm going to hand over to Mark, also known as Neon, to show you what's in store for PoE 1.
Thanks, Jonathan. Well, let's just go ahead and get straight on into it. Here's the trailer for Path of Exile Affliction.
Mr. Roberts.
Something moves in the mists. Something sinister. Thorn. Rot. Plague. And claw.
Oh, I get
The
12.
affliction spreads. It hungers for more. Tread lightly in the wildwood, which shifts and bites. Accept our help, the ancient power of the Asmiri.
What are those?
Beware the spirits.
Those new ascendancies?
Yearn for freedom. And the heart of evil that waits in the dark.
Wildwood ascendancies. Transfigured gems.
Ready yourself.
Oh, this is the one I didn't know what the fuck it was.
Waiting.
Ultimatum. I can't spell if I spelled that wrong. My spelling's really bad. I thought there was like a look at it. Affliction content reveal. Ah, okay.
In the Affliction League, you will encounter sacred wisps, which beckon you to enter overgrown passageways that lead to the Viridian Wildwood.
Come to our glory hole.
A vile affliction has covered this forest with a foreboding darkness.
Oh my god, it's gonna
You'll need to uncover the forest
kill my
mysteries to
graphics
put
card.
a stop to the source of the affliction. As you approach the darkness, the wisps burn away its affliction. Make sure you tread carefully, because they only have a limited
that's
amount
cool.
of power. But be warned, the darkness is full of cursed monsters that emerge to kill you.
Cockroaches.
As you explore, you might see other types of wisps trapped inside the darkness. The Wildwood is trying to guide you towards clues about its affliction. Follow the trails of wisps by collecting them, and you may uncover many different secrets.
It's yellow.
New characters to find, shrines, boss battles, and all kinds of new encounters are
Currencies and
lurking in the
shit?
forest just
Are they,
waiting
like,
for you to discover.
Themed?
There are many rewards to earn for those brave enough to seek them. When the sacred wisps run out of energy, they will return you back to where you came from. Any other types of wisps you have collected will return with you to Rayclast.
Oh my god.
These wisps, having been saved from the affliction, disperse into the environment and inhabit randomly chosen monsters in the area, increasing their power and also their rewards.
Okay.
The different types of wisps have different effects on monsters, and sometimes more than one type will inhabit a single monster,
With
making the
bosses?
fight even harder and even more rewarding. If this happens to a boss, you could be in for a tough fight, but if you can overcome it, your efforts will not be in vain. Primal Wisps grant an item rarity bonus to inhabited monsters. Wild Wisps grant an item quantity bonus, and Vivid Wisps cause them to drop currency
Yeah,
items.
yellow's currency.
If a monster gets all three types, they'll drop more items of a higher rarity and a lot of currency. While exploring the Wildwood, you might find some of the last few Asmeri wanderers who have managed to survive in the forest since it was cursed. Each of them have different survival specializations, and they are willing to teach you if you agree to help them defeat the source of the affliction, the King in the Mists. Choose which of the Asmeri that you will complete quests for to unlock one of 3 new Ascendancy classes, which you can have in addition to your regular Ascendancy class. Up to 8
Two
points for
Ascendancies?
these classes are unlocked as you complete more quests for the Asmeri you are training under. The Warden of Eves can teach you to become a Warden of the Magi, a powerful class that takes advantage of wilderness knowledge. A Warden of the Magi can learn to use tinctures which coat their weapon, granting various powerful effects. You can equip tinctures in your flask slots and toggle them on and off at will. You can only have one enabled at a time, but the effects are quite conditional, so you may want to have more than one equipped and swap between them during combat. For example, equip the Ironwood Tincture to gain the benefit of always stunning enemies on full life.
Oh, pretty good.
Tinctures can also get random mods. This one in particular adds stacks of wither to targets on full life and steals frenzy charges on hit, which makes it great as an initiator. When you are fighting rare monsters or finishing off tough bosses, you will want to swap to the Oak Branch Tincture, which grants Culling Strike, increased damage against enemies on low life, and has a chance to steal a mod from rare enemies you kill. You can buy more tinctures from the Warden of Eves using Primal Wisps when you find her in the forest, so keep an eye out for her. As a Warden of the Magi gains more Ascendancy points, they gain access to more skills that let them further specialize in tinctures. For example, Nature's Concoction allows you to invest in having your tinctures enhance your flasks. This Ascendancy skill makes it important to think about which slots your tinctures are placed in, and what flasks they are adjacent to. You will have better uptime on those flasks and they'll be stronger as a result. But there are plenty more skills to choose even if you don't want to engage with tinctures.
You're like a map clearing
For
one,
example,
map boss one.
Another new ability to unlock is Barkskin. It's a reservation skill that causes bark to grow all over your body, increasing armor. As you take damage, the bark falls off, increasing your evasion. Over time, the bark will grow back, removing the evasion bonus but increasing your armor again. The Breaker of Oaths can teach you to become a Warlock of the Mists.
Wait, hold on. The bark skin was part of what?
Another new ability to unlock is Barkskin.
Oh, that's for the
Bark-
Magi, okay. And this one
can teach
is
you to become a Warlock of the Mists.
Breaker of
An ascendancy
Oaths.
class specializing in the darker arts of the Izmiri.
Warlock of the Mists.
One powerful ability you can choose is Blood Hunt, which grants an active skill called Ravenous. This skill lets you see what type a monster is under its life bar, whether it is a demon, beast, undead, construct, or humanoid. Consuming a corpse with this skill gives a buff to damage against that type of monster, and reduces damage taken by it. You can only have one type active at a time, so it's a good idea to choose wisely for the area that you are in.
Choose wisely.
Some bosses like the Maven are eldritch in nature and don't conform to the regular corpses that you have access to, but don't worry. The Breaker of Oaths has a shop where you can trade wild wisps for corpses that you can place on the ground wherever you are.
The fuck? Can you
Buy an Eldritch corpse and you will be able to get the bonus
res
of
the
fighting
Eldritch?
Eldritch entities like the Maven. You may notice that most of the corpses he sells are not monsters you normally encounter. You might want to try turning some of these corpses into specters, to take advantage of some of the unique abilities that these monsters have.
Oh, that's cool.
The Warlock of the Mists gets access to many other abilities. For example, there is a trio of curses that you can pick from. One of these curses targets your minions, giving them life degen and making them explode for massive damage when they are near death. One of them prevents enemies from dealing damage for the latter portion of its duration, which is quite powerful against bosses. This curse creates the interesting build decision of whether or not you should increase curse duration or reduce it. The final curse is a mark that causes enemy phantasms to be spawned when you hit the marked enemy. These phantasms aren't on your side, so they work well with on-hit and on-kill trigger effects, for example. The Primal Huntress can teach you to become a Wildwood Primalist. Unlike the other new ascendancies, the Primal Huntress lets you customize your tree. You do this with charms that you can buy from the Primal Huntress for Vivid Wisps. Charms have randomly generated mods which give stats from regular ascendancy classes, allowing you to create your own hybrid ascendancy class. Charms are magic items that are aligned with different attributes. So for example, this Ursine charm is strength aligned and has gotten the melee hits have a chance to fortify stat from the champion, and the ability to stop your movement speed going below base from the Juggernaut. This interline Corvine charm lets you get the stat that makes your consecrated ground effects linger from the Inquisitor, and the effect that makes cursed enemies explode from the Occultist. Some of the combination of mods that you might find for sale on charms can be extremely powerful, so keep a lookout for the Primal Huntress's shop even if you are not playing as a Primalist. As a Primalist, you also get access to a few other interesting abilities.
So we got 3
Use Warcries next
customizable
to corpses and they have a chance to drop an
slots.
extra item. It opens nearby chests too.
We're better than you,
Oh, thanks for the follow.
and we know it.
The Primalist also gets access to a small extra backpack, just in case you find yourself needing to cart more items to town during your map runs. If you are
Project Cube.
unhappy with the class you picked, or you just happen to find a really great item for another one of the classes, you are able to change which class you are using next time you find one of the Izmiri Wanderers.
Loot shout.
Just remember that you will have to do their quests in order to gain the ascendancy points for that class. These quests will lead you towards the ultimate goal of the Izmiri: finding the King in the Mists, defeating him, and cleansing the forest of its affliction once and for all. There are new uniques to find, rewards to claim, and new ascendancy classes to master in the Affliction League. Now that we've covered what's in the League, let's talk about some of the changes you can expect to the
fucking
core
looks
game
cool.
in 3.23. For a start, Ultimatum is finally going core. When talking to players at ExileCon, it was the #1 feature that people requested. When
Yeah,
playing
I
through
didn't-
in-game maps, you may sometimes encounter the Trial Master, who offers you a choice to undertake a deadly Val trial in exchange for great rewards.
I don't know ultimatum, so we'll have to
If you
figure
defeat
that
the
out
trial, he
tonight.
offers to go double or nothing with you. Do you take the risk and go for an even better reward? Or do you take the winnings you have already earned off the table and go home? We've done a full rebalance of Ultimatum and have added many new mods and rewards, including both new and reworked uniques. The base number of rounds for an Ultimatum trial is now always 10, with a chance to spawn the Trial Master boss fight on the 10th round, if you are able to make it that far.
10 rounds.
As part of 323, we have also removed Metamorph from the game. All the Catalyst rewards from Metamorph have now been moved to be rewards for Ultimatum. We have also added a new Val-themed Catalyst that works on corrupted items. As is normal for most content that gets added to endgame, we have introduced new Ultimatum passive skills to the Atlas tree.
Ooh.
One great
Just
example
one,
is the
please.
Keystone Grueling Gauntlet.
Thank you.
It makes Ultimatums last 3 extra rounds, but you cannot choose the modifiers, and it prevents the final Trial Master boss fight from spawning. The level of challenge becomes extreme during the last 3 rounds, and not being able to choose the modifiers makes it even harder. But the rewards are insane, and for those with very high-end characters, it might be a bet worth making. There are lots of other Atlas passive skills you can pick from for Ultimatum, so choose wisely. Now, it's time to talk about one of the largest metagame changes we've ever made. There were 3 systems in Path of Exile that were all trying to subtly modify the behavior of skills. These
Gluten-free.
were alternate quality gems, Labyrinth Helmet enchants, and unique threshold jewels. We've combined all of these together to create a new system called Transfigured Gems that allows us to fully achieve the goal of these 3 systems and then some. Transfigured Gems are alternative versions of existing skill gems that have different functionality and balance from their regular versions. We have added a huge number of these with interesting variations that drastically change how existing skills play. For example, Frostbomb of Instability. It changes it from a cooldown skill that you can cast occasionally for a large explosion into a skill that you can cast continuously but deals less damage and doesn't apply cold exposure. It changes the role of Frostbomb from a utility skill into a main damaging skill. Another example is Detonate Dead of Scavenging. You can't use it on corpses that were created by Desecrate or Unearth, but in exchange it does a whole lot more damage. You won't be able to use it as your main reliable source of damage, but it's a great skill to use as a Falling utility to get some extreme burst damage. Raise Zombie of Falling. Instead of raising a zombie from a corpse, you summon them from midair. They fall to their death, dealing AoE damage where they land. While this sounds like a physical damage version of Firestorm, you should consider that it scales with minion damage and also triggers on-death minion effects. Blight of Contagion. This version of Blight is now spread by Contagion, so you can use it as part of your Essence Drain build. We have a huge number of these. Transfigure Firestorm into Firestorm of Meteors, Transfigure Blade Trap into Blade Trap of Greatswords, Transfigure Barrage into Barrage of Volley Fire, and so on. There's a lot to experiment with, and we look forward to seeing what builds you can come up with. But how do you get Transfigured Gems? The Divine Font at the end of the Eternal Labyrinth has been changed to a gem crafting device that can modify your skill and support gems in a lot of new ways. One of the options you can now choose is to turn a skill gem into one of 3 Transfigured Gems. But that isn't all the Divine Font can do. It has a lot of other gem crafting options you can use. For example, you can add quality to gems, add experience to gems, sacrifice a gem for 1 or more treasure keys to open Azaro's chests, and you can even exchange support gems for exceptional support gems like Empower or Enlighten. These are just some of the options you'll find the Divine Font is now capable of. In order to replace the rewards and heists that previously gave alternate quality gems, we have done a
I wonder if like you don't get a transfigure that you don't like, you have to pick one.
balance of the rewards of heist as well.
It like forces you into it.
Experiments
I
and
wonder.
base types have been rebalanced. New replica uniques have been added and old ones changed, and we have increased the amount of currency from display cases as well. On top of this, we have gone through and buffed the quality stats on most damage dealing skills. In most cases, they will be significantly more powerful than before, and also more interesting. Overall, this is one of the largest metagame shifts that we've ever done. There are so many crazy new skill combinations to plan around, so we
Rolling
expect to see some
magma.
really interesting new builds. Next up, I'd like to hand back over to Chris to talk about the new supporter packs.
At this point, we'd usually talk about the League supporter packs.
Give
We're
us
doing things a bit
money.
differently this year. Rather than releasing
Money,
League supporter packs
please.
today and then our annual core packs 2 weeks later, we have combined it all together into a strong set
Yeah, they
of core
deserve it.
supporter packs that will be released alongside Path of Exile Affliction next week. The series contains 5 packs, each with its full value in points and a collection of exclusive cosmetic microtransactions. The higher packs contain physical merchandise. We'll unveil the full details of each of the packs at release next week, But in the meantime, here's a sneak peek of some of their exclusive cosmetic microtransactions. These packs will be available for purchase when Path of Exile Affliction launches on the 8th of December. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. We're just about to start the Q&A with Ziggy D. Afterwards, we'll post Path of Exile Affliction's full patch notes. With the release at the end of next week, our community team will be posting crucial information you'll need for Affliction's release. Keep an eye on the news. On release weekend, we expect to launch the new mystery box and this season's Kyrix Vault Pass. Thanks for joining us today and checking out our latest developments. We're looking forward to exploring the Viridian Wildwood with you next week. We'll begin the Q&A shortly, so please get your questions ready.
Oh, where's the Q&A part? Q&A.
G'day, ZD here, folks. Exiles,
Ooh,
welcome.
this is an
for
hour.
a giant, jam-packed Q&A after a huge reveal session. We have here today Chris, Jonathan, and Mark. 3 for the price of 1 this time around, not just Chris. Welcome,
I'm gonna skip
folks.
over the Path of Exile 2 stuff.
All right, so moving on to Path of Exile 1 and Affliction first. So Affliction looks like you're kind of walking through a carpet of cockroaches with a candle to scare them off. Do you guys ever worry when you design a league mechanic like this that you're going to be just scaring some players off? They're just going to nope out because of that?
No. It is a horror game and there's a lot of horror in there already. We've had a few examples though, like just to give a small anecdote of there was, I think it was the last or maybe the current, the mystery box that has the spider portal in it.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had people like specifically go, I don't want to buy this mystery box because I have arachnophobia and I don't want to get that spider. Is there a way I can get everything but the spider from it? And the short answer is no. But like, I mean, how does that person kill Weaver or get through?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. But no, generally, like the game has a lot of horrific stuff in it, and as you can even see from what's going on in that mercenary demo, you know, we're not pulling our punches when it comes to that stuff for sure.
I remember Eric came across a list of things not to include in games because they scare the players. Things like objects that are too sharp and pointy, or trypophobia triggering clusters of small irregular holes. And he's like, this is very useful.
Oh, tryptophobia, yeah. I have a little bit of that. I don't like that.
Exactly.
Great.
Shit crawling in like a bunch of little
talking about
holes and
mechanics,
stuff.
The wisps that allow you to explore the wildwood are somewhat of a limited resource, it seems. Is this a timer or is it a distance traveled, some kind of mechanic like that?
It's distance traveled, but it's distance traveled into the bugs and the cockroaches and stuff.
Yep.
So it's how much of that you can purge away. So
Ooh,
if you
what is that?
run back on a path you've already been, like let's say you run up some way and then you want to go back and then go a different direction, like running back where you've been doesn't use the resource, but running anywhere new does.
I think that'll be a popular decision instead of it being like, say, a hard timer.
Yeah, for sure.
So how long is a venture into the wildwood typically? Like, how long are you like exiting your map?
Well, even typical is somehow subjective here, but obviously it depends on your character. But I mean, anywhere, I would expect most people to be in there like kind of a minute, upwards of 2 minutes. But
So it sort of depends on what you run into though, because if you run into a boss fight, it can it can be a while.
It does depend what you find, but like I mean, you could be in there as short as 30 seconds, or or a lot less if you're just not really caring where you're going. But that is not the right tactic to
Yeah,
have
if
at
you
all.
suck dick, you're only gonna be in there for 30 seconds.
You could be in there for a quarter of an hour if you're just incredibly methodical and barely move.
You gotta be good at being in the glory hole to be in there. Sorry.
We are catering to slower players who don't like the gotta go fast thing. Like, you can go fast. It's more efficient to go fast, but you don't have to.
I wanted, sorry, I wanted something that was
But you gotta go
normalized a
fast.
bit more between faster and slower players. Like you can do it at your own pace, as opposed to feeling like ultra stressed.
No, you gotta go fast.
And a faster player can do it as fast as they want, and that's still fine.
Excellent. So you get these wisps, and you free them. They go into your map, and they infect monsters, and you make them drop more.
So the way I learned how to play Path of Exile, by the way, like really play it, I watched fucking speedrunners. So it's like They're the fastest, right? If I can somewhat keep up with a speedrunner, that means I'm going pretty fast.
Loot. Are they like more likely to choose more powerful enemies like rares and bosses, or is it just fully random?
They are more likely to pick, yeah,
I get a lot of
bosses and
shit from
rares
like
and
Tai
higher
Tai
rarity
Killer.
monsters going down. Yes.
And otherwise there would have been like no chance for multiple wisp types to go into one monster, right? So
Yeah.
we had to make it so that it was relatively likely for that to occur, but it doesn't always happen. It's kind of it's variable.
As a typical Path of Exile player, I immediately thought of abuse cases for this. Can you like kill all the monsters in a map except the boss, and then just go in and come out, and then free the wisp into the boss only, stacking it
Well,
up?
thankfully, as we're also PoE players, we have also thought of this.
Yeah.
We don't think of everything, but
Fuck
at
you,
least in
Ziggy
that case, no,
D.
it is a chance
We
per
actually play
monster,
our
so if you
game,
clear the whole
unlike
map and then
other
go and do it,
companies.
the resultant is, well, it's actually detrimental for you.
Yeah. And the wild would always appears at the start of the map. So
Oh.
that means that you always like have the chance, like that way you get the most, just to make sure that you get the most what do you call it?
Although
Equity
sometimes this
or
shit's
drop
broken,
equity
like
or whatever out of doing it. So like
A little like
knockback at the beginning of last
exactly
season.
like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Wow, you guys have thought of it.
Yeah. We've done this for a while now. I guess.
Some experience.
Yeah.
So some players love mechanics in maps, and others seem to love ones that cause them to take a break from a map. There's definitely some divide there. Interestingly, I noticed that Affliction is a little bit of both. It's a portal, but it juices your map afterwards. How do you folks like to balance the desires of the player base when it comes to designing leagues like this?
Ultimately, we just like to do a bit of all of it. Sometimes it's out of map, sometimes it's in map, sometimes in this case it's a bit of both. Like there isn't really some, elaborate decision that goes into it. It's just kind of like we feel like it's time for one or the other.
I mean, we definitely have discussions of like, oh, we've done a couple of an area ones, let's do an out of area one. Oh, we've done some out of area ones, let's do an area one. Like, in this case, we were like, it just sort of felt good to have both things. So it was good. But yeah, like honestly, we try to just have a variety.
It's this kind of concept, at least that I use internally, which is what shape is the combat, and we want to try all the different shapes we can do, and we haven't run out of shapes yet.
This
Oh,
shape
that's-
technically is whatever shape you want to because you can run. So it's undefined shape.
All right.
I have to always look out for my co-op buddies. How does Affliction work in multiplayer?
So once you die, you can't go back in. Just worth noting. Technically, that's multiplayer or single player, but only the map owner can, or if they're not present, I believe it nominates someone else, but I'll make sure that's the case if not. Can actually reveal fog or the mist, whatever the bugs.
Oh.
And when you collect, so the expectation is the party members kind of follow them around, and the wisps that you collect, it's the same amount. So they're just a shared pool. Like
any player who collects wisps will go to the primary player. So like they're all so there's effectively the map owner is the one in charge of the of exploring basically. Yeah.
But anyone can pick them up if you want to spread out a little bit like that. So yeah, it works in multiplayer. Due to the nature of the rewards, just being based on the monster's drops, they will scale with like party drops like normal. So there's no like they just work as standard multiplayer drops would work.
Right.
Great. And we get this new ascendancy system as a reward for this, which seems quite significant, especially seeing some of the specific bonuses there. How challenging is it to actually unlock these Wildwood ascendancies and gain all of their points?
So you can get 8 points per class. You get your first 2 points when you meet the NPCs, which occurs relatively early. I think we have and it is slightly RNG based, and whether or not you find them. And but you can increase the chance of finding them by following the trails of wisps. They will lead to them.
So the different colors have different things at the end of the trails, so you can kind of pick which direction you want to go.
And each color associates to an NPC. So I think they can start appearing around Act 2, and then the expectation is by end of Act 5, you've probably found each of them once. And when you meet them, you get your first 2 points.
It's pretty frequent.
And then they'll give you a quest if you spec into that class to find more wisps or kill some monsters. Like real basic quests, all done within the forest. And then you get your 4th point, and then or 3rd and 4th points, and then you have a quest to kill like a mini boss, and then it'll give you your 5th and 6th, and then the final 2 points are from killing the final boss of the league, which is probably relatively difficult. Like that's a 80 level 83 kind of, maybe equivalent to say like Lycia from Sanctum, or not quite pinnacle boss, but like just below it kind of thing. So that will be hard. So you could argue the first 6 points, the first 2 points are very easy. First 6 easier than probably say Labyrinth or the normal Ascendancy equivalent, but the last 2 points will be quite a lot harder than the regular Ascendancy 8 last 2 points.
And this is in parallel / addition to your existing Ascendancy class and its progress. You have 2 classes here to clarify.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that last one that was revealed was like a little bit of everything. pretty cool. Those charms. So the unique specters from the Breaker of Oaths, including bosses like the Hydra, was certainly a surprise. Can you have more than one Hydra Spectre, or like an army of bosses?
You can have up to your Spectre limit of Hydras, but they cannot be desecrated. So once you have it, once you have the item, you buy it from him. You can only Spectre it once. Once it dies, then you have to buy more of them. But yes, it will be hard to find them.
You can trade them.
Yes, you can trade for them.
Ah.
I really wanted this whole, I wanted you to be able to find the NPC and then be able to effectively buy something from them that could be worth multiple divines. And I'm like, a Hydra could be worth multiple divines. Like, let's see if we can do that.
Note, you can buy these and trade them even if you aren't that class.
Yes. Yeah, of course, of course.
So effectively, so there's a reason to look at the shop for all of the NPCs, regardless of whether or not you're that Ascendancy class, because other people can use them.
Talk about the fragility of the Hydra.
Yes, well, it is worth noting. The Hydra's health in particular is relatively low, so you do have to keep it alive. The Spectres in general they're pretty interesting. There's a lot I've tried to go for where we've gone and tried to give stats that other builds wouldn't use. Like there's one, for example, where one of its properties just says your owner, as in the player, has 5% more attack damage or melee attack damage. I can't remember which of those two. And then if you get all your Spectres, you can get like 40% more attack damage. But now you're a melee build that's investing in plus Spectre limit, and there's some interesting weird things you might be doing there. And then of course that means you need minion life, otherwise they're all just going to die. And there's hopefully some kind of weird, interesting builds that come out of this, where you have unorthodox builds using Spectres that you normally wouldn't.
Too many stats.
And you had that interesting one with Fire Fury and.
There's a kind of, I don't know what they're called, but it's effectively Fire Fury and Hailrake, and they specifically the Fire Fury one says becomes empowered if there is if you also have a Hailrake Spectre, and the Hailrake Spectre says the same thing. So then you want to run 2 different ones, which again is also kind of abnormal, because normally when you do play a Spectre build, you stack a lot of the same thing. So it's promoting a bit of just different gameplay around that.
So there's something going on between the Fire Fury and the Hellrake. Then they have some backstory together. I guess
they're empowering each other, yeah, for sure.
They are. Fanfic authors take note.
Yeah, here we go. New fanfic in progress. The charms for the Wildwood Primalist, they capture random parts of other Ascendancy nodes and allow you to create a new one in kind of like a build your own Ascendancy fashion. What sort of limitations are there? Can you just get like any power from any node?
You can't get anything. I can't remember exactly what you can and can't get, but there are some stuff that is like it's binary and ultra powerful, and like that's just too much power to give from a single node like that can have 2 modifiers on it. So you can't get everything, but you can get most things, and even in some cases where they are binary, we've made non-binary versions of that property where it's like can either be chance-based or percentage-based, like a portion of it. But they do stack. They
neutered it.
So like for example, you can get the 3 sockets, and obviously you can get like we showed say the Occultist Curse Explosion. Like if you just want to go all in on the chance of that, you could try and get that on all 3 of them. But again, it's going to be pretty rare. They're unmodifiable, but again tradable. And I'm expecting, again, going under the philosophy of find these
they're
NPCs
unmodifiable.
Find something
too.
worth a lot. I do want it to be that.
It's gonna be important looking at the shop.
Get multiple divines worth of a trade because you find just the perfect charm.
It'd be good trading.
You don't have to be that
currency.
To find the charm.
Yes, we'll keep reiterating that. Yes.
Yeah, there's some
the shops.
Yeah, the shops should be valuable. Hopefully.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. Are there any limitations to this Primalist shouting items at corpses thing? It's like, are people just going to be going around shouting at every corpse for extra loot?
Well, it's one of these.
Is it As soon as I saw that Primalist shouting thing, that reminded me. I used to play fucking Warcry Barbarian
This
in
one's been very
D2.
controversial, I point out. Don't get me wrong.
I just fucking shout all the
See,
time.
for me, I really like it because it's a thing where if you're an efficient, well, okay, let's think of it a few different ways. Firstly, if you're destroying corpses, it doesn't work, right? There's no body left to get loot from. So you can deal with spikers and or the porcupines and among other things. You have to have the corpse around, which means you have to be playing a build that doesn't destroy corpses. Meaning, of course, you have to deal with the porcupine Goliaths. I don't know who heard that before, but whatever. And then the other thing to note is it actually rewards slower players more than faster players because you have to Warcry, which is cooldown based. Are you really going to wait around meticulously Warcrying on every single corpse, or are you just going to move on and kill more monsters and run more maps? And so if you want to get the most out of your map, of course, that's a way to do it. But if you want to get most out of your time, that is not the way to do it. So yes, you could like Warcry, bind it to your left click and then just Warcry whenever it's available and get whatever loot you can get.
I reckon opening the chests is the
opening
that's time efficient.
Opening chests is a big time
that's
saver.
the main use of that skill, I would say.
But it is worth noting, just to get into some specifics of how that works as well. It doesn't care about the monster's quantity and rarity. It does care about map quant and rarity. So a boss is just going to occasionally drop like an item, if that. It doesn't like re-drop all its drops, so it's not like ultra powerful. Due to that, it's probably honestly going to yield a little bit more. Like it's more for like getting a little bit of extra currency than it is getting like unique items and rare items and stuff like that.
I'll ask the obvious question that you knew you'd get when you added a backpack inventory expansion. Do you think you'll give this to people outside of the Primalist?
Short answer, no. But I mean, look, we chuck these in, we experiment for 3 months, and we see. This was also the node of the second highest level of controversy internally. We'll give it a go. We'll see what happens. But like, I
Everyone's
do
like,
not see that.
"That's a fucking cube."
Outside of the Primalists, after the league, even if the league happens to go core,
Yeah.
Controversial league design. It sounds like internally. Oof.
Well, they're 3 months experiments essentially.
Yeah, we like to try things.
I say controversy. It's fun.
It's not like there's a shouting match or anything going on, right? Like it's just.
Well, one of us isn't shouting. No.
We've got some more chat questions on Affliction before we move on to some of the other features. When you enter the Wildwood, do you start at the last place you're at? Is it like a continual exploration, or is it a new area each time?
It's not continuous, no. It is effectively an infinite forest, but you're put in a random place every single time.
It looked like
it's new exploration.
Delve.
It isn't continuous from the previous areas, no.
Delve with like
It
paths.
feels slightly like the idea of Delve without the actual specific.
It isn't
Delve.
really.
Aye.
Like Delve. It doesn't have the whole like big map or anything like that.
Just like a small version
Are the
of Delve.
wisps tradable or collected as currency items at all?
No, I mean they're tradable to the vendors, but that's not really trading. They're usable as currency for the vendors, but aside from that, no. They are, and between instants, they don't carry over at all.
Right.
Because once you leave the Wildwood, they're dispersed, so you don't get to keep them at all. No.
And just clarifying for people that missed this detail, you'll be able to use the regular Ascendancy class alongside the Wildwood Ascendancy class. It's extra on top.
You will eventually get 8 points in both. Yes.
Sweet. Can monsters attack from the fog of war in Affliction, or only once they're fully revealed? Ooh, good question.
You will not get you're both not going to be like given an advantage as a ranged character to shoot into it, and you will not be attacked from it. They will not do similar to Delve Darkness. They will come out of the darkness before they engage with you. And generally, only things you reveal will actually engage with you.
Do map modifiers from the area you entered the Wildwood from affect the Wildwood, or is it a completely separate zone in that regard?
The map mods do affect it, yes. And
oh wow.
Where it doesn't increase the amount of wisps you get, it does increase the
Hardcore
loot you
deaths.
get in general, which multiplicatively applies with the bonuses the wisps give monsters afterwards. So you are obviously to get the max rewards like normal, you're incentivized
But
to
pack size works on the monsters in the Wildwood.
Oh yes.
And because pack size works on them, that means you do get more wisps if you increase pack size. Because they're part of the drops.
There are monsters that have wisps already in them in the forest, and they will give wisps. So yes, pack size will increase the amount of wisps you can get.
Which actually means that pack size can increase the duration that
Wisps.
can stay in the
No,
wild.
there's no
if I
age.
understand that correctly.
Different wisps.
Whipped cream.
Oh, right, because that's
Yeah.
the right. Okay, so it doesn't. It's just increase the rewards then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Just more rewards.
Yeah,
And
between this and the
technically
wisps you're
difficulty.
freeing, it sounds like a bit of a map juicing league then. People
That
to go excited
was,
about.
I mean, that was what I was going for. I
Mm.
really like things like Delirium where they overlap with all the other leagues.
Yep.
It's worth noting on that point. You might think, okay, the wisps disperse into the air and affect monsters once you exit. It will also affect monsters that are then spawned afterwards. So if you then go and activate a breach, there is like a portion of the breach monsters will be dusted as well, and thus their rewards and difficulty will also be increased. So yeah, it overlaps with any in area league, I believe, as long as the monster gives loot and experience. Which obviously, if it doesn't, you don't really care about it. So.
Yeah.
This league sounds cracked. I like it. All right. Talking a bit about Ultimatum, the
King all
long-awaited
over
return.
everything. All the minions.
It has been a long time in the returning. Did you face some specific challenges with its re-implementation or something?
Main challenge, I guess, was finding time to actually do the rebalance and reassess it. But like once we found the time, which we did, we got through all that, and I mean, now it's finally coming back. But yeah, it just comes down to time. We've got so much we always want to do, and just finding the resources to be able to get someone to fully reassess it and make the changes that we want it can be challenging for sure.
So it's not just something you wanted to just slap back in as it was then. It sounds like it's changed a fair bit.
It's had a substantial amount of work done to it. Like, it is quite a lot there. There's a lot there. Yeah.
And obviously it's going to be very different to how it was given the Atlas passives as well, and how you can modify it and change it, which will be relatively fun. But taking that into consideration as well is something that we didn't have to deal with before that we do now.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that Ultimatum was so popular and so requested to return that it was like the #1 thing asked about at ExileCon? Is there anything to like learn from that for future league designs?
Well, I think about it, and also why do I think I like it? I mean, the mod selection is fun. I like how it works in parties as well, and I like, for people who know my Aurabot addiction, I love playing in parties where you get to vote on the mods and you go and pick the mod that no one wants just because you want to. Or you're an Aurabot and you pick that mod that causes your auras to apply to the enemies, and you just then hopefully your teammate,
And the double or nothing stuff is also very. I don't want to use the word addictive because that's a bad word these days, but definitely addictive.
Oh, I love that, and I think a lot of people resonate with that as well. Where you when you've got the divine orbs on the line, or the headhunter on the line, or like just whatever items on the line, it's like the thrill is just, it gives you that adrenaline rush that like I almost used to get in hardcore league. When I actually played that a lot more. Rest in peace.
It's risk reward, to put it another way, right?
When I knew how to play the game. Well,
I think it had like a unique pacing too, with like intense action break, intense action break.
Oh yeah, for sure. I like that as well a lot. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say too many lessons learned aside from just like, or like, how we can use things in the future. But I guess ultimately the risk reward and the pacing are probably the two biggest ones.
Do you want to talk about what happened with?
I want to see fucking hardcore get crushed.
Yeah, I think it was around the time there was a lot of there was a bit of like, how do we make this harder that went on, and it ended up just cranking the rare monsters up. Like there was just points where there were like 9 rare of those blood chieftains on your screen, and the problem with that, especially with like obviously now looking at rare modifiers, like the level of visual pollution that adds. And like you can't even tell what's happening. Like there was a lot of going on in that league where there's just a massive crossfire of projectiles and just like a whole bunch of rare monsters, and like so we've gone with almost a more what we call expedition style balance, which is just like tone that down but make each monster individually more difficult and more meaningful. So it should be that it is less like more comprehensible in the moment as to what you're actually fighting and what you're actually doing, and still difficult, as opposed to just like spam everything, like crank up the rare
Was it
monster
like
number to infinity.
100 duck-sized horses versus 1 horse-sized duck?
Honestly, been working pretty well with respect to
the one with the 1 horse-sized duck.
So Metamorph is getting removed as a part of this coming back of Ultimatum, with its unique rewards going to Ultimatum. Can you tell me a little bit about that decision, like to remove Metamorph?
There's a few things going on there, but the first is just the visual clarity of it again. Going back to that, like you put these monsters together, and then it just does this kind of like morphing thing. I mean, look, I've played this a lot, and it transforms into something, and then I'm dead. I'm like, I don't even know what just happened. Like,
Yes.
what killed me here? I actually don't know. And it is meant to be the case that obviously I know what monsters
Black
I'm putting
ink
in, and
blob
I'm putting
killed
in
you.
this monster, this monster, this monster, and I know these do this skills, and because this one's in the brain slot, it does this big AoE. But the reality is, like, that's way too much to try and know and remember, and like, there's hundreds of monsters with hundreds of skills going on there, and it's like you can't really tell. And so when you do put it together, it's like, oh, this I like these rewards, and you put those in, and that's ultimately what you do as a player for that. And so you put in a monster, it spawns, and you maybe just insta die or you maybe not. And getting that right is just pretty impossible, I would say. Like, I love the mechanic in a nutshell of you get to put monsters together to create a new boss fight, but it just wasn't working.
It was never my favorite league visually either. I just don't think it really looks that great. And there was actually one other one. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
They
right
gotta
now,
fix
but
the
it
parts on
actually was,
Metamorph. That's the issue.
Surprisingly, Metamorph was like quite annoying from a maintenance perspective. Like there was quite a lot. Like every time we added a monster, we had to do stuff relating to Metamorph, and like also the way it was originally made was just like a bit annoying. So there was certainly there were a lot of designers who were happy to see it gone as well with regard to just maintenance stuff as well. So
and we're careful before we remove content, right?
Oh, sure.
Considered decisions.
Yeah, I mean for sure, but it's like
we're careful.
There was certainly a lot of factors there.
They're
Another
like,
thing
we're
about
very
it is the,
careful. Fuck
meta
Metamorph.
in-game thing where you put together 5 boss parts and do it in his lab. Like, there was that sad thing where because that area was a standalone area, it never got map mods. Like, it felt like often the rewards and the difficulty were just underwhelming relative to doing them in the area. I mean, you're less likely to just get insta-killed in there at least. So in some ways it did it better in that it was more controlled and telegraphed, but in the other sense it was just too easy. Like, the thing spawned and then just died within 3 seconds often. The life wasn't high enough, and no map mod damage. Like, yeah. So it was just due for its removal, honestly.
Yeah, I certainly agree with a lot of issues that Metamorph had and experienced a lot of them myself, but I do think there was a good idea there. And like you said, with
Transfigured
the
gems.
boss parts going together, that actually felt like it worked a little bit more. But like you said, it wasn't quite there. So something to play with in the future, maybe.
Yeah, oh, for sure. The idea is there is a sound idea there for sure that I'd like to see if we can play around with later and re-envision in some way. Hopefully.
Yeah, you get the situation where in order to keep it, you kind of want to do all the work to rework it, and if you're doing all that work, you may as well just bring Ultimatum back.
So this does raise a question you haven't had to deal with before, where you've removed a mechanic now that has a premium tab that people have purchased. What is the plan for that?
So that tab, so due to Catalyst moving to Ultimatum and there being the inscribed ultimatums, that tab is just immediately converted to an Ultimatum tab. So it'll have the Catalyst will now store there, and your inscribed ultimatums will also. I think there's 60 slots for inscribed ultimatums in there.
An ultimatum tab now.
You don't need to buy a new one; it'll automatically transfer over.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Yeah, these guys actually fucking think
just see if there's any other
before they
ultimatum
drink.
questions.
Or they
With
drive
out of the game,
me
will there be another
crazy.
master hideout NPC to replace Tane?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Not currently, no.
All right. Can ultimatum be blocked on the Atlas passive tree so that it doesn't appear?
Yes, it can. The same node that blocked Metamorph has been changed to a new node that blocks Ultimatum.
All right.
Can you
Cool. We
block
had a bunch of
Affliction?
questions about transfigured gems. This is a big one, and chat also has a bunch of questions about it too. I can tell. So this new transfigured gem system's kind of a big deal. Is this replacing labyrinth enchantments, alternate qualities, and threshold jewels entirely?
Short answer, yes. It is replacing it. Belt enchants are gone, boot enchants are gone, etc. Which I like in the sense that it reopens, because those were very old designs. I mean, sure, the belt enchants came newer, but it does free up a lot of design space to use in the future. And with a lot of the changes to quality and what the gems are doing themselves, like, the loss is ultimately inconsequential. So yeah, they're gone.
Deal with it. All right. Are there multiple different transfigurations for each skill, or is there one for each? It seems like so many new gems, effectively.
So, I mean, we're still cranking them out. Like, we're not going to stop until
shit.
there's a cutoff.
There's gonna be a lot.
We'll probably add them later if we still feel like we have to.
Still working on them.
But we're aiming for 1 per primary damaging skill minimum, but 2 maximum. So it's 1 to 2 per skill, but auras don't get them, heralds don't get them, utility stuff don't. We're really focusing on your main skills that you would primarily normally 6-link and whatnot.
Oh no,
Marry
am I gonna end up playing
link,
Toxic
hero
Rain?
builds,
It's
but,
gonna have some cool
That limit of 2 maximum is just in the context of this particular expansion. If it's
augment
a
on
system,
it.
we can make many and many in the future.
Yeah.
It allows us to so there's this thing where like cleave is cleave, and you could change cleave to something. You could change cleave, but now you're ruining the kind of like simple thing it is at level 2. You get it at the game. You just want to cleave stuff. So overcomplicating that to try and make it more interesting and new is honestly not the right answer, and it's kind of a thing that's happened to a lot of skills. So now with this alternate gem system, we get to take those ideas that people have of like how we can be transformative with something like cleave, and we get to just add that skill gem without having to compromise that early game
Just have like
experience.
cleave like
That I
ricochet or
think
some
is
shit like
very,
that.
very valuable, and it's, I mean, the possibilities are endless, as I guess I could
Like
say.
a spectral
right?
version of the
So
the
how
cleaved
do you
weapon.
be transformative with something like
pops
cleave? I'm
out.
curious. How do you approach that?
Well, I don't know. Like, I can either talk about what we've actually done or talk about what we could do.
Both.
I mean, something is you could. Well, actually, okay. Let's go with what we have done. I think what we've done with it, and there's some details here I might be wrong on, or something that might have changed, but we'll just get into it. I think right now you have to be using a sword and an axe, so 2 different weapons, which is interesting. I believe it also scales. I think it generates rage and scales AOE based on rage. So it's kind of like pushing you to be a rage build. So it's worth noting, like, that might sound more niche, and that is the point. That the alternate gems, the transfigured gems, are generally more niche. But the power opportunity is much higher as a resultant of that. So they will scale way better into endgame, and it will save us the problem of just having this extreme like power curve of damage on cleave just to try and make it do an absurd amount of.
What are they gonna
AOE again.
overlook?
So,
Are there any other cleave?
I think we've just got the one right now.
What are
We
they gonna
experimented with a
overlook?
few
That's
others.
if it
like,
changes,
there's
it's
one
gonna
with
be
them pale, but I think we've
fucking
gone with it on
crazy.
double strike now, and like some stuff with bleeding, but that's gone on something I did. So many. There's the hundreds of these things, and we've gone through so many
The
hundreds of
bleeds
iterations
could be
that
fucking crazy if
forgive my
they like
memory a little
don't
bit,
look
but,
at it properly.
yeah, there's a
The
lot
damage
going on
over
there for
time
sure.
shit.
How does this affect Val gems? Do these new versions have Val versions or only the originals?
These new version, well, technically the way it is worked now is just you can have a Val alternate cleave, and that just grants Val cleave, but it doesn't have the same mechanic, so it won't
Right.
have the rage thing. It like technically the Val skill is a separate ability, and so yes, it can be corrupted to grant that extra ability, but it doesn't have the same properties. No.
Gotcha. Yeah. So are they always going to be just strictly better? Because that's just that cleave version sounds better than regular cleave, or is it sometimes going to be they're just quite different?
It's Blade Vortex,
It's
but it
strictly
spins
better
faster.
if you embrace the niche.
okay.
Yes.
Right.
If you are
It's double
investing
strike,
in
but it
rage
swings
and stepping
faster.
and using the sword and axe, then yes, of course, it's better.
It's cleave, but it
I mean, you
cleaves
can't exactly say that the
further.
one that has zombies falling from the sky is strictly better, right? It's just a totally
That's
different.
That was so
I
fucking
mean,
good
Yeah.
Yeah.
with the zombie
looked
fall.
pretty
It,
awesome.
it does depend on your definition of better, of course, but I'm talking about just like raw clear speed or raw, boss killing speed. Yes, from that measure, like especially with respect to the low level skills, that is often going to be the case if you embrace that build and that kind of more niche build. But yes, again, there are plenty that are like hard to compare. Like the frost bomb is a good example. Like it's now a clearing skill as opposed to a more utility focused skill, not having the cooldown, for example. So a lot of them fill different roles, and so they can't really be compared one to one.
I'm gonna go Magi.
yeah.
I mean, it's definitely going to shift the
Magi.
meta a lot.
Magi?
Like, just because there's going to be
The
like,
tinctures.
there's a lot of new stuff to try there. So
It's
What if I
shifting
do that?
enough that if people were to ask me what I'm going to play, I actually
Ooh,
genuinely
like
have no
Pathfinder?
idea. I honestly am. I don't know. I'll find out in the last day probably. But
Is this something you might explore with utility skills or support gems, things like that as well in the future?
it's a big maybe.
Yep.
Support gems. haven't really thought about a support gem case. I mean,
The thing with support gems is you can just add more support gems and you don't need to worry about modifying the existing ones really. So
you
it
may
looks
as
like
well
the
just
same.
add more.
Yeah,
Alternate heralds. It can be done in some cases. Yes, it can be. But we'll see whether or not it finds need for it. It's just in those cases, it's like it goes from giving buff A to buff B. Like doing it with an aura, like you'd have to do something very wildly different to make it really transformative. Otherwise, you're going from just giving a certain stat to giving another stat, and that's not really what it's about.
What does this mean for heist in terms of it losing one of its big rewards, but also like specific heists that were gem type heists and whatnot?
So the way, how that works now is that every single tile set just can. So the rewards are no longer bound to the, I should say, the rewards from the display cases at the end.
Yeah.
At the end of the blueprints are no longer bound to the tile set of the base item type of the blueprint. So, so you can get kind of any of the rewards. You can get replicas from any of them. You can get alternate base types from any of them, or experimented base types, and you can get now currency. One thing we did do is buff the currency. Like we did certainly obviously acknowledge losing the gems removes some of the value from running heist, quite a lot of it. So we buffed the currency just to make it better. So when you do get to the end, you have less.
He asked a question about heist and the gems. He literally almost went, "Who the fuck is gonna play heist after this?"
Cases where you just get like
I could feel it in his voice.
From completing a blueprint, that's just like completely insufficient. We have added new trying to make chase ones, but as it's pretty hard to reliably make chase uniques because the meta.
That's too bad. I like heist.
Kind of ultimately control what that is.
No, it's not the most popular.
To add more powerful ones. We have rebalanced a number of replica uniques, and we've rebalanced a lot of experimented base types, including trying to emphasize that the jewelry, the amulets, and the rings have some very, very powerful alternatives. Honestly, they're probably the best amulet you can get now is an experimented base type amulet. But obviously, they're pretty hard to find.
And who's going to be playing heist?
Of course. It's 5 new replica uniques, I believe.
Yes, I believe there's 5 new replica uniques.
Oh, okay. It's not too
expansion, so 15 new uniques total.
It's not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah. Nice. So safe to say, heist will be something you'll be keeping a close eye on then to make sure that the rewards are up to par now after this removal.
I hope so for
It'd
sure.
be cool to build a build around
excited about those
piece of gear,
base type amulets,
like a specific piece of gear. I've never really done it.
-1 prefix, +1 suffix, and now you've got like -3 prefix, +3 suffix, and -3 suffix +3. The invert of that, and like it's like what kind of ring can you make when you've got 6 prefixes? Is that better? Is that worse? Or like 6 suffixes, and then there's like ones that reduce the amount of. There's ones that reduce the amount of prefixes but increase the potency of suffixes and stuff like that. And so,
stop hearing about this, Mark.
Yeah,
I'm like, geez.
That facial expression as well. Whenever
it's like, you sure about this?
Yeah.
Jonathan and I have seen the code to handle this stuff, and we're both like, "Ooh, how does?"
No, it's just
it's good.
Interesting.
Nice.
Cool.
I like when seeing devs learn about these things for the first time.
Oh, I didn't know we were doing that.
There's always so much going on that it is nearly impossible for everyone to know everything.
For sure. Yeah. That makes sense. So people are obviously pretty excited about the transfigured gems. They do look quite exciting, and that's a lot of effectively new skills for us to play with. But it does kind of raise the question about one of the more controversial decisions with this change is that, the Labyrinth, it has fairly different gameplay than most of Path of Exile. It's got like a lot of environmental hazards and traps and puzzles and a labyrinthian layout. And naturally, that's not exactly super wildly popular content for people to run. Not everyone wants to play that. So can you tell me about the decision to make Transfigured Gems specifically a reward for Labyrinth, especially since it looks like something that you'll want to run a lot to get more of them?
Lab's going to be pretty popular.
Well, a few things to talk about here. I mean, the Labyrinth is, I understand. I understand how some people feel about it and people don't, but one thing is it is core content that you do run through the campaign and you do to Ascend. And we wanted it to be that the transfigured gem system is accessible there, as opposed to like, say, where alternate qualities were in Heist, even though there was a kind of soft mandatory nature of having alternate qualities, it's like, well, it was the same problem. I don't want to run Heist, let's say, in a given league, or someone does and someone doesn't, and so you have to trade for them. And so for that case, it's the exact same thing, right? You can trade for these transfigured gems, of course. But we've done two things as well. So obviously, when you get to the end of it, you put your gem in. You can pick from the one of three outcomes. It maintains its level and its quality as to what you put in. So the skill doesn't just become worse, at least in that regard. But sometimes there is an option that will transform it directly into its transfigured counterpart. Which means if you don't want to take the gamble and just keep trying to pick random ones, you can wait for that and convert your, say, Firestorm directly into a transfigured Firestorm. So that at least will make that a bit easier. But yeah, ultimately, I wanted it to be somewhere where it was introduced early enough, around level 30 is about right. So you're not waiting until end game before you can get these. Like, a player can experience these through the campaign, get a feel for them, get used to them, and level them up, instead of getting to end game and then completely changing their entire build. Like, it being early enough, and Labyrinth is around the point where that is like, a good place to commit to that. And also, you're already doing it for your Ascendancy, so it's a good way to introduce the mechanic to those players, as opposed to just kind of putting it somewhere a little bit random and a little bit hidden. So that's the primary motivation.
Path of Exile has a lot of content that is going to vary depending on player taste. Some people like Delve, some people don't, and that content has specific rewards.
Should have just
And
fucking
those
put it in
rewards are
Delve.
almost always tradable. And
For
so
sure.
in this case, if you want one of the gems, you can also trade for it if you don't like Labyrinth.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm interested in that idea of like
It
players
will
running
really
into
piss
it
people
as
off.
a course of their regular gameplay. Does that mean there's a pretty good likelihood then that each time you run like Normal Crawl and Merciless Labyrinth and whatnot for the first time, and say you only do them those times, that you're going to actually get a pretty relevant gem reward upgrade each run?
The option is always there. So one of the crafts on the bench is always to convert it to a transfigured gem. So it's not like that one's random.
Yep.
Whether or not you'll get the one you exactly want, obviously isn't reliable, but you will always get. So if you put in the common one that's put there is if you put in an int gem, you will get a transfigured int gem back. So at least it's likely if you put in a spell, you'll get a spell. And if you don't want to take it, you can just be like, no, I don't want it, and take your gem back, and then try again next time. So it doesn't force you to. So you can put your primary skill in there, hoping for the best. And if you don't get it, you take it back, and then just keep playing your build, or you run it again if you want, or you can wait till crawl and run it. And it is worth noting that, let's say I know this is a bit later in the game, but the Uber Labyrinth has 2 crafts by default instead of 1 now. So when you get to the end, you get a few more opportunities at doing it, and that's one tactic could be
Uber Labyrinth is going to be
the easiest labyrinth is the shortest and easiest to get through, obviously being lower level and shorter. You can, at like a high level player, could just go and run that a number of times just to try and get the right transfigured gem. But obviously you won't get a lot of the good crafts and a lot of the good rewards that also come from it. But if that was your way to try and get your most appropriate transfigured gem the fastest, like that is a tactic you could do. So it's not really meant to be ultra taxing and time consuming to try and get the one you want.
That sounds like, from a reward perspective, that it's quite good for both lab runners and also people just doing it just the once as they go through. So I like the reward sounds of that. But are there any planned changes to running the labyrinth itself or making the labyrinth better in the future?
We went over that a lot. And as a simple, again, going back to we think of it like this: we could have done that, or we could have added ultimatum. It's a resourcing problem. Not to say those are the 2 options, but what I'm saying is that it is very what it needs is a lot of love, and we need the time to do it. So yes, we had a massive list of changes of things we wanted to do, and we just couldn't find the time to do it. So it is something I definitely would love to do later, for sure. Because
all right, next league, guys. Good, nice, cool. Sounds good.
I was about to joke confirmed, but that's a bit dangerous.
I said it for you.
Next week, so yeah.
Will we get to see all the gems before launch? The transfigured gems?
It is our intention to start posting them, yes. As we're still churning through them, I think our plan is to start posting, we'll do a series of posts. I could be wrong. the community team can correct me at some point, but I think it's to do a series of posts, and
Where are they posting
as we
it?
then make more, we'll just do more posts and just keep adding them until the last very possible moment.
It's
Right.
worth mentioning with this kind of content because it's so parallel and because so many, like, every gem is optional because there are so many possibilities. We just start 200 and then the ones that are finished get released and the other ones get released later or scrapped, and we don't know what the set is going to be currently, and we're just going to keep going till the last minute getting these in, and yeah, it should be interesting.
All right. For standard players, what's happening to existing old quality gems and lab enchant items and stuff like that? They sticking around?
I think the enchants remain. Old quality gems, I do believe all of this will be in the patch notes after this, so I might say some wrong stuff, but I do believe old quality gems just get converted to regular quality, retaining the value.
But the quality, the quality that is now different because we've changed.
Oh yeah, well that's it's worth noting that the quality on or almost every single gem, I think the word quality appears 314 times in the patch notes, I believe is what it is. There has been a substantial quality adjustment to all the skills. I know this is tangential from the question a little bit, but we're going with a more multiplicative approach there. So instead of like just a lot of gems being 20% increased damage or 10% increased attack speed, we're trying to really look at what is the skill doing. Like if it's something that is about duration, we instead add duration, but instead of doing 20% increased duration, we're adding like +1 or 2 seconds, like, or plus 0.1 per quality kind of thing. So it's meant to be more multiplicative as opposed to increases, because there were skills where obviously the more of the increase you have on the passive tree, the worse the quality becomes, or vice versa. So yeah, but this is, I think, changed with a lot of the base skills as well, mind you. I think discharge in particular is one where it's like it has increased area of effect per charge consumed, where that obviously could get into a massive amount of increased area of effect, which means if you're playing that build, then investing into like a 10% increased area of effect node on the tree is ultimately doing nothing. Like you're going from 200% increase to 210, like it kind of doesn't really matter. But now, so that's been changed to be multiplicative as well. So as we've gone through and done this qualities, we've tried to do that on a lot more gems to make the gem more like about its base stats, and the passive tree is multiplying that as opposed to adding with those stats, which does yield a fairly large amount more power for a lot of these skills.
That sounds like a quality change. I love it. Sorry, couldn't help. We've run over time, but just a couple more questions before we finish up today. So in the past, it was pretty typical for expansions to come packaged with some pretty substantial changes to skill balance. Obviously, we're getting like a ton of new skills. So that's obviously affecting like skill meta and whatnot. But the last few leagues haven't really had much in the way of skill balance, and we're finding like, player expectations there. And is that something that you're continuing to like not do, or any thoughts about that?
Again, a lot of it comes down to honestly time, but for this one, I really wanted to do something that wasn't just playing that almost cat and mouse game of like upskill A and then next league upskill B to be comparable, and then maybe it goes too far, so then you upskill A again, and if you don't do that, it's just nerf central, right? So where we do that for some extreme cases where we bring them down, I wanted to do something that really wasn't just, let's up cleave by 10% and something else by 10%. And again, noting I don't want to add mechanical complexity to a lot of skills, especially early, because it just makes them more convoluted and confusing. So this was a system that allowed us to not play that game, but yet add thousands and thousands or millions of possible permutations. And we're going to be less hesitant, given time resources, less hesitant to change the balance and change alternate gems or add new ones. So it's given us a system that allows us to do future balance a lot without compromising kind of that core game and that new player experience at all.
It does. It's also like, I mean, the quality changes are a pretty substantial balance change to existing skills. Like that's a big.
Oh no, that is
a big thing.
for sure. And and a number of skills have changed. Like what we've done is simplified some base skills because we have, and then what we've done is taken what they were doing. So an example of something we're trying to do, I don't actually know if we've done this because so maybe not. I know I probably shouldn't mention things like this, but for example, you get ethereal knives, and it's got all this talk about lingering blades going on. And yeah, most people who play the game in advance know what lingering blades are, but like a new player is not going to know that at all. So we've returned. So ideally, we return EK to its former glory of what it was, and then we add an alternate gem that's really emphasizing that lingering blades mechanic and benefiting from that. And then we add another alternate, whatever, how many more alternate gems we want to. So it's allowing us to restore some of those, especially lower level gems, to their simplest forms, as what they should be, and then also give them a rebalance. I think often it's resulting in them being a little bit stronger early, which is going to change a little bit. But I like the resultant a lot better, where you're not getting overwhelmed with this kind of almost unnecessary information early, and then you get this alternate gem that's really emphasizing that mechanic more. And if you then go down that path, it can become even stronger than it ever was.
If a player is approaching the feedback of there need to be balance changes based on the fact that they feel there's some staleness in the metagame, if they feel they're playing the same kind of pool of builds for a number of leagues in a row, then the transfigured gem stuff will have fixed that, right? Like, every build is now affected by there being multiple different versions of the skill available.
For sure.
There will be, it is going to look entirely different. And it's worth noting, transfigured gems came from me sitting down with Mark and saying, the players have an expectation for significant balance changes. The problem is we can't really do any. We've hit the point of like having to make the skills more complicated. What can we do? And Mark suggested transfigured gems, which, as Jonathan Blow would say, there was immediately tons of gold on the ground to pick up with that design thing, right? You know, it's so much cool stuff we can do, and absolutely is going to affect every build in the game.
Great. So conversely, talking about ascendancy changes, last league Chieftain underwent a pretty big overhaul, but its rework seemed to have few fans in the end. It's at around 2% pick rate for most of the league in softcore, although it did gain some fans in hardcore, it seemed at least. What sort of goals do you have, like larger ascendancy changes like that, and do you feel like the Chieftain hit the mark?
2%'s not bad, to be honest. It's still, 10 times higher, 20 times higher than what it was. Or maybe even infinitely higher, because I think it was 0.0% for a while. Obviously rounding. But honestly, I would say it didn't quite hit the mark, but like there's a fine line to tread when it comes to ascendancy balance. Like 2% is probably less of a failure than 25%. Because if everyone's playing it, it's ridiculous. Or we go back to like Slayer Cyclone era where there's 51% or something. I'm going off Pro Ninja numbers, obviously, so high level players. But that's within a kind of like era realm of acceptability. But yes, I would say like in an ideal world, it would have been a little bit better than what it was. So, but geez, it's hard to get that perfectly right, like for sure. But yeah, and obviously if something does get used in hardcore and sees more use there, that is something we like to see, and that's cool. Whether or not it's intentional or accidental, generally it's just the players discovering what's best. Like we don't plan around that kind of thing, but yeah.
Is it something you're gonna continue working on then? Like not Chieftain specifically, but also just in general, trying to get something right with those pre-existing ascendancies?
Every so often it's going to come up where we rebalance a given set of them, or maybe we do a wide sweeping numerical changes, or maybe we take 2 and completely redesign them, or take 1 and redesign it. But again, it's all at the expense of something else, and we just have to weigh those decisions. Like again, there's no time to do that when you have 100 to 200 between there of transfigured gems to make. It's the same people doing those things, so. We just have to make those choices as to what we want to do. And maybe there is a better metagame thing we could be doing, but eventually we're going to circle back to them and we're going to rebalance them or remake them, yeah.
And you did add 3 new ascendancies in this expansion.
Yeah, technically, yes, there are 3 new ascendancies, yes.
Awesome stuff. Thank you very much for spending so much time with us for the Q&A today. We did run a bit over time. I appreciate that, and it was a pleasure to talk to you all. Thank you, Chris, Jonathan, and Mark.
Thank you very much. It's appreciated.
Thank
Great to talk to you.
And I hope to see some epically crazy builds on release day.
Yeah, awesome stuff.
Hardwood.
Thanks very much for watching, folks.
So I've a good example here is this Flame Blast. So like Flame Blast of Celerity? Deals 400 to 600 damage, 165% more spell damage for each stage. And then there's the Flame Blast of Contraction. Just less base damage, 100 to 200, 140, 210. 600% more spell damage for each stage, up to 11 stages. I used to do Flame Blast like Totem. Back in my day. Base radius is 3 times as big too. So it's like 200 times 6, which would be 1200 versus like 6.5 times 1.5, which would be like 1,000. This goes to 3 stages, and this goes to 11 stages. And it's a bigger radius. Minus 0.2 meters per stage. Oh, this increases with each stage, but it's only 3 stages. %50 chance to ignite too. It's interesting. What was the other one I was looking at that I can kind of understand what's going on? The Bone Shatter. The Blink Arrow is interesting. So, Blink Arrow of bombarding clones. Maximum of 3 clones that use rain of arrows. They deal damage. I mean, you don't really use Blink Arrow for the damage, but... And then these ones cast with elemental hit. Prismatic clones versus bombarding clones. It's like slight twists to everything. Kind of interesting. Like this has increased impale effect for the blade fall of impaling versus the volleys. This just kind of like affects the way that Chain Lightning works too. Or Arc. Very interesting. Alright, see what the fuck I'm gonna play. Let's see what I'm going to play. Will bosses up on a budget of Explosive Trap Trickster. There was one I was looking at. I kind of want to see this Falling Zombies thing. 5 League starters to see what he's got. Evolve Flame Blast. Looks interesting. I actually didn't get to watch this. This was just running in the background while my doggo was hanging out. We'll watch that. Oh yeah, SRS Guardian. I didn't get to watch this one either, even though it says I watched it, but... The Falling Zombie. That's pretty good. You gotta do the one with the scorpion legs, like up in the...
Starter for the Affliction League coming up, and this is going to be the fallback, so you don't have to worry about it breaking your league start. But obviously, folding zombies is Guardian.
Wait, you might be able to see it.
Which is a very true and tested build and a very easy fallback. So you
I
don't
thought
have
I
to
saw
worry
one that
about
was
it
like
breaking
scorpion
your league
legged.
start. But obviously,
Yeah.
for leveling
I'll pause it
as
right where
a
he's scorpion
Guardian,
legs.
Summon Raging Spirits, which is a very true and tested build and a very easy fallback. So you don't have to worry about it breaking your league start.
It's this one right here. Watch right here.
But
Yeah, he's
folding
scorpion
zombies
legged.
is extremely experimental. And yeah, this is what I'm gonna league start. As soon as I saw that gem, I was like, you know what? There's no race this league. That one. I'm going that one. And I really want to listen to Let the Bodies Hit the Floor while I'm playing this build. And it's gonna be an amazing time. And like I said, worst case scenario, if it is trash, then summon race trap.
Did you like fully build it out? Like, I'm not good enough to fully build out the builds beforehand. I'm too dumb. It scales off minion damage.
You know, a negative or a minus to the damage you deal with things like cluster trap, multi trap, or minefield. Minion damage is not affected by this. So in similar of the way the Totem Explode build worked in Crucible, this should be a similar effect. And we have managed to get it to around 5-6 million DPS with not very good gear and no awaken gems, etc. So
Yeah, minion damage is easy to get.
Depend. Does it feel trash to play? And then we are choosing the Guardian Ascendancy so we can get Radiant Crusade to have this big fella just run around and clear the screen for us when we're convocating. So that should take care of a lot of the clearing issues. And on top of that,
Yeah, so the league is going to spray cocaine all over the minions. So you're gonna want to kill
this
everything.
might be really cool as well. Montegrel's Grasp has some really cool features.
The increased elemental damage, reduce maximum number of raised zombies. Raised zombies have 5,000 life. Resistance, 25% increased size. Enemies killed by zombies hits explode, dealing 50% of their life as fire damage. That is fucking sweet. Raised zombies deal 100 to 115% more damage.
For zombies, and you might actually be able to use two.
Yeah, you can dual wield them, right?
This scissoring is stupid and wrong. I'm scissoring from the future.
Oh.
And we have now learned that the zombies are actually not able to use a double Montegruels, and this is surprisingly a buff because we also just learned that all our calculations are correct. We were calculating that it was the damage of a regular zombie attack, but it is 2.5 times the damage of a regular zombie attack. It turns out the less damage from mine will actually impact our SRS, putting us down from what we hoped for, like 9 million to 4.5 plus Animate Guardian. Honestly, again, it is a very experimental starter. This is what I'm starting with still, though, and we should end up somewhere between 5 and 10 million damage, depending on what we find. It'll be a spicy league start, boys. And that's
interesting.
Using one Montegruels, which means we also get to use a shield for even more defense. It does not get better news than this. Now, there are some other unknowns with Montegruel's Grasp as well. So, for example,
you can be
it does have
tanky having a
25%
shield too.
Increased race zombie size. So if we have two of these and that actually work, does that mean we get 50% zombie size? And the fact that they'll just leave massive corpses, is that going to scale our AoE? We don't know. But we will be getting the enemies killed by zombies explode, dealing 50% of their life as damage, and we'll be getting 100% of their life as fire damage. So that's spicy. And we are obviously getting the raised zombies deal more physical damage. So this could be an absolutely insane build. And it is going to be a lot less detailed. It's different from normal. We do not have a step-by-step. We just have the one tree, and this is generally what we're looking at. I'll probably try to switch as early as 38. That's when we get Minefield, and I will be ascending Radiant Crusade. Very worried about mana issues early on.
The SRS was
Terrified
Radiant
that we just
Crusade
run out
too.
instantly. Now, obviously, Radiant Crusade will take care of any clear I need, and it would pretty much just be for bosses that I'll drop some falling zombies anyway. But we've gone for a very tanky approach. We will have a 5.4k life at the end game. We'll have 100% suppression, 40 to 25 block, and that's actual block. So pretty good there. No max stress. We have 15,000 evasion, and we have 23,000 armor. Now, a good angle at the end game could be to do a 4th Vow. That could be really nice. And obviously we do have Radiant Faith giving us a bunch of armor there as well, which is nice. So looks pretty solid. We have EB, lots of auras. And you can see that the gear is incredibly easy to get. There is a divination card called Death, which gives the Montegrel's Grasp. And yeah, it's very farmable. So your main hand weapon, your best in slot weapon, should be incredibly easy to get. Now, sadly, even though we have a very easy to get best in slot weapon, there are no corruptions that should matter for our build. So that is sad. We can see that all the other gear is going to be pretty straightforward, pretty easy. And like I said, a 4th Vow and doing is a backward Glorious Vanity could be really nice for some tank there. The Abyss Belt could be really nice as well to get lots
The
of damage
second
on your
ascendancies.
zombies. The Darkness Enthroned,
Does
almost forgot the name there.
Path of Building doesn't have the
Could be
second ascendancies
good as
caked
well,
in yet, does it?
100%, and getting some really nice tools there. So that's something I'll be keeping an eye out for. Now, in this POB, we do have an Animate Guardian as well, which will actually be dealing damage or rather increasing our damage, but it doesn't actually show up in POB. In fact, a lot of the damage that we should have doesn't show up fully in POB. We've done some stuff to simulate here. Now, obviously, assuming POB eventually calculates this for us at launch, you can remove the custom modifier, but currently it does not. So this is generally the math that we've set up with chance to deal damage, mana cost, throw speed. The zombies deal more damage. They have more damage.
Calculations if you do not match up with the updated POB.
Yeah. I am going to do the Grinding and Garakan as the Pantheon, and the Bandits is going to be kill all of them. And we can go through the other stuff here. So we have the Summon Sentinel of Radiance. See here we have a 2120 zombie, and honestly, most likely we will have a level 20 because getting a 2120 will be really hard off the actual falling zombie gem. We don't know if fresh meat will work, but we are hoping that it'll work.
Pretty sure a lot of people are going to be playing the falling zombie.
And gives you really, really good stuff when they've just been summoned for the first 10 seconds. They're always just being summoned, so, you know, it just depends on the wording and what's actually going to work and what's not going to work. Minion damage, we can swap out for Awakened minion damage. Minefield, which is going to be huge. High Impact Mine, and then we can switch this out for Fizz damage, which is basically we are going to Animate Guardian and
skills.
We know what to use. Debuff Spectre that deals a debuff to enemies. That'd be great. And then we have a Castle Damage Taken Molten Shell setup. Molten Shell needs 39 or more. Mario SRS looks really cool, and later today or something we should be getting a lot of the T gems. Really looking forward to
might go
with some
SRS.
others, but so far I'm really heavily leaning towards League starting this. Just having the zombies just drop down that like looks hilarious. And Guardian,
yeah, I'm sure this caught a lot of people's fucking eyes though. But if I do trade League, you know, softcore trade League, it's not gonna be that bad after a while, because then everyone's gonna be farming that shit.
Third, and I'll be taking Bash.
I get all the I get all the leftovers. I'll be right back. Okay. Ooh. Got slippers too. I have to I have to keep my window open, otherwise it gets too fucking hot in here. My computer
We did look into using
generates so
Reverend
much
Shade
fucking
as
heat.
well, but elemental scaling on this didn't look as spicy, so we've opted for not doing that. There will be a lot of different variants of this. We've seen other people doing Necromancer, etc. And if it has insane damage, it might be something that ends up working both on Pathfinder and Champion, and just going super high on tank, similar to what we did with the exploding totems build. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of variations people come up from with this. We will be linking to both a 322 and a 323 version, depending on if you've updated POB or not. Shouldn't change anything here, just whether it'll actually load into your POB or not. So yeah, it looks really good. If you can fit a cluster, particularly on softcore, that would obviously be a lot of damage. Yeah, a lot of fun stuff to be had here. So let's
that looks fun. I don't think I'm gonna be doing that one though. See what he's got.
So how did my league starters pan out after the patch notes? Some of you might be wondering, hopefully. Patch notes not too devastating. Honest to God, I expected every single one of my builds to get utterly destroyed and thrown in the trash. But there's only kind of a couple of them, okay? As far as league starters are concerned, the only one that's real kind of like iffy or whatever is Cold Dot. Cold Dot's in a kind of odd place right now, where you used to have Vortex on left mouse button, triggering all the time, going down all the time. Got a huge circle, deals damage while you're leveling. That's really sick. And then you just auto lay it on the boss because it's on left mouse button. Well, now Vortex has a cast time. While its damage over time hasn't been modified, you can't have it on left mouse button anymore. And what that means for Cold Dot is your clear is just going to be worse, and it's going to have another button, and it has a big ass cast time, man. Like, what the hell? So now the leveling, you probably just go Wintertime brand, you can do whatever. But man, when you're playing Cold Dot, it's got the same damage as before, but it's just clunkier. It's like a 6-button build now. Okay, we'll break it down. You have Shield Charge on spacebar, Creeping Frost on right click. Then on Q or 1, right? I'm just going to do QWER. Q, you have your Hatred on Blessing. W, you have your Cold Snap. E, you have your Vol Cold Snap. R, you have your Curse. On T, you have Frost Blink. And now, on your second hotbar, we filled up every single gem. On your alternate hotbar, you have to put Vortex down and then cast that yourself. Now, the thing is, I already was doing a curse on hit setup to remove a button. Now you got another 6 buttons. Dude, it's too many buttons. It's way too many buttons. I don't know if I can recommend someone to play this, especially when you could just play DD instead, right? If you're a new player, you want to build all content. Like, man, Cold Dot wasn't so bad before. You got Vortex, you just pop Volt, Cold Snap. But now it's just like your clear is a little bit worse. I don't know, man. I don't know. But CF Champ, though? CF Champ, though? Fever Champion, though?
CF Champ,
oh my God. They buffed our reap damage. I think it was something like 20% more damage when you've got your Vol reap stacks up. What the hell yeah. Corrupting Fever Champion. Okay, LA or CF Champ. These are the 2 blaster builds to consider. Personally, I'm going to play some CF Champ, man. I love doing Deli. I've just been playing it every league.
CF Champ.
I'm a CF Champ sucker. And they buffed it. And man, this might be the last time that I could play Corrupting Fever Champion. We'll see. Maybe it gets got with the lightning arrow changes. We'll see. We'll see. But man, I love Blast. I just want to boot up CF Champ. I'm going to grind something. Not Expedition. Not this league. I swear to God, I won't. Legion or Ultimatum. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, CF Champ login. And then I'm going to blast some Deli. Okay, I'll keep it a buck. I'm going to blast some Delirium. Hell yeah.
I do a lot of Expedition too.
Slayer, totally fine. It got buffed. Lamau. Okay, extra quality. You were never corrupting your Bone Shatter to 21.
Bone Shatter Jug.
Version. You'd only ever get it to level 20 with 20 quality. So we got some extra damage off of that.
I'm ranking these. These are in order.
Now, Jug, on the other hand, man, Jug is a lot weaker as an endgame option in SC Trade, where you can kind of blast on that Divergent Bone Shatter. You can kind of abuse all of that attack speed and whatnot. That just might not be an option. I mean, we'll see with the transfer gems. But it might just not be doable. I don't know, man. We'll wait and see. But yeah, man, with Bone Shatter Slayer, if there's no Divergent Bone Shatter, Hell, dude, you just log in on Slayer and do Karn's Tainted Pack stuff afterward. Bone Shatter Jug. Hey, man, you're still thick and juicy? Hell yes. You just don't get to do that Ashes Divergent Bone Shatter stuff, but, you know, it'll
Not-
still be tanky, still Bone Shatter.
Not that
Just,
big of a deal.
You know, a lot less damage on the top end. If you've been watching the stream, you already know, but I'll be releasing a Detonate Dead guide, okay? And this Detonate Dead is pretty good, because you know what I did? You'll never guess what I did. I just opened up every single Detonate Dead POB I could, and I tried to make the best goddamn version of it. I mean, it's really nothing too crazy.
I like how he
The
fucking.
craziest thing I did.
I don't
on
think
Detonate
I've
Dead
ever seen a
was I'm just
tripolar
using
bear
Dread
video
Banner
before. It's
and a brutal
fucking funny.
restraint and energized armor. Okay, I swapped a banner. I added 2 unique jewels to the top end.
I'm not gonna do
changed some
Detonate
aura
Dead.
effect, and it's got 95 evade chance. It's got 40k armor, and you've got 15 million DPS. But you know that's the stars aligning, procking, you know, whatever. But hey, even if it's half that, without the EO proc, without the whatever, with the whatever, you got like a 8 million ignite with those kind of stats. Man, you're gonna be chilling in Ultimatum. You're gonna be chilling when you're doing your bosses. It almost makes me want to play DD, almost. But come on, I gotta boot up that CF champion and another ignite build.
I don't know if I want to do
Mischief too.
Jesus,
Yeah,
like,
same as last
Detonate
league.
Dead for
You know,
bosses.
I was kind of hoping that this league would be like a bossing league. If it was a bossing league, bro,
Not really
I would
bossing.
have booted
I
it
don't
up and
think.
logged into mob, but it's not a bossing league. You know, patch notes, there's like one new boss,
Maybe.
but you know, he's just gonna kind of be like Lycia, where you just go in there and kill him. You know, you're not like farming him or anything. I thought maybe there'd be like like Maven's mom, right? Like, you know, but no. So Moss, same old. I mean, the Stone Golem stuff. Stone Golem, from my POB calculation, it went from 165,000
Wait, what is
HP
this
to
one?
163. Like, it went from 24 million DPN. And another ignite build. I'm gonna be doing a mob mischief too. Yeah, same as last league. You know, I was kind of hoping that this league would be like a bossing league. If it was a bossing league, bro, I would have booted it up and logged into mob, but it's not a bossing league. You know, patch notes, there's like one new boss, but you know, he's just gonna kind of be like Lycia, where you just go in there and kill him. You know, you're not like farming him or anything. I thought maybe there'd be like like Maven's mom, right? Like, you know, but no. So Moss, same old. I mean,
Give
the
it to
Stone
her.
Golem stuff. Stone Golem, from my POB calculation, it went from 165,000 HP to 163. Like, it went from 24 million DPS to 23.9 million DPS. Like, unironically, you know, it's like absolutely no change at all. You're just gonna have access to cool new ascendancy options and, you know, whatever the hell you can get on your charms. Hell yeah, bro, log in. But yeah, bossing. Okay. As far as mid game build, bro, end game build on
Maybe,
macro.
Ma.
Vortex Ignite, I'm praying, please give us an instant Vortex. Okay, don't remove Vortex Ignite. Come on, man. That was such a fun build. You just run around, you're like skating through delirium maps, dropping your Vortex. The ignites pop, they prolift, the explode goes, it prolifts your ignite. The whole screen chain exploding, igniting, proliferating, spreading. You can open like 7 breaches and you're just shield charging around through all of them.
Whoa.
Everything's dying. It was great. It's fucking fantastic. That would suck if they got rid of vortexes dropping on the ground instantly. That would be awful. That would suck. We'll see. Who knows? Transfigure Gems, the biggest question mark in PoE right now. So many builds are hinging on Transfigure Gems. Not too many of mine. Really just Ignite Vortex at this point. Anyways, quick summary. Okay. Coming up this week, League Start build guide videos.
Absolutely banger league.
Dead Elementalist. Mob Mischief Elementalist, Hillia. And the boners. We got Jug and Slayer boner. Keep your eyes peeled. That's what I got planned. Let me know if you got some cool shit. I mean, we're going to have a bunch of cool endgame builds, but as far as League Start's
Yeah,
concerned,
Jug, bone
it's kinda
chowder.
same old for me. There'll be a couple fun, cool new things, I'm sure. Somebody will get baited into whatever Jungrone's peddling, but you get to go with the old reliable if you want this League Start, or
He's pretty fucking funny.
Stick with TR until
Alright.
you get that.
Alright, so Toxic Rain. I just want to see what he says about Toxic Rain, because I played a lot of Toxic Rain.
In one, quite often we just have a lot more artillery ballista, but poison artillery ballista needs quite a lot.
And try something different.
Build guide might not be for you. And
I've never done like
early
SRS or
on,
like
the craziest tank because Pathfinder
Bone
really
Shatter.
benefits from quite a lot of gear, but when it is online, it is incredibly strong and it just feels really good. with caustic arrow just for Brutus. This is just
Caustic arrow leveling.
you check out our video on how POB makes point and the bandit quest as well. Now, if you go to the skills section,
It's the same as last league, right?
Different skill sets, making it incredibly easy to follow, and getting so much aura effect.
Quill Rain.
Getting loads of really cool stuff, and we have fun. Is in the
Lightning Coil
game. We run a Topaz Flask, a Sapphire Flask, so obviously we do have Turn-Up Terry is the only so note setter. Your so different information on, for example, how to get the
biggest change from 3.23 is that 10% of AoE from toxic rain quality got replaced by duration. How much area effect do we want? Alright, so it didn't really change that much. Why totems?
39
but you don't fucking die.
Because that did get nerfed in the current patch, so we have to get that differently now. But all of this is super achievable. If you're wondering for exactly why we want 39% AoE, after all the testing the community have done for AoE, not only makes the pods AoE bigger, but it also pushes the pods further away. So the best TLDR for why exactly 39% AoE is 39 is exactly the number where the AoE of the pods is the biggest possible without pushing them as far away from each other as possible. So if it was no pushing apart on the pods, then we would just want to stack AoE.
Kind of interesting. I didn't know that.
So everything should be answered here in the notes. It's pretty easy to follow. And then we do have the artillery ballista that you can switch to as well. And this gets even more damage. And this is a very, very low estimate. This is a build that scales a lot from additional arrows. Toxic Rain does not, but this scales an insane amount from additional arrows. And right now we're only, I have actually with the Atlas tree, not your skill tree, your Atlas tree. And that makes that ghosts cannot possess rares, and that's because there is a flask killing ghost that, especially on hardcore, can be very deadly because it'll turn. Like, you need 100% chance to play, then you should be able to swap. This is really important because this is a poison build, so this is supposed to be way more endgame. That is why we're showing what all the awaken gems, etc. you can have, and everything like that. So this is a bow like this is surprisingly craftable with a rug. You really want to just like keep getting like either a short grove.
You really want green.
And in a pinch, you can get like the 1.4 attack speed bows, but you just want really, really high attack speed, and you want to keep adding until you get loads of the different fire, cold, and lightning.
That doesn't seem right.
And Rug at some point can give you the option upgrades every mod to its highest tier, and if you get that when you have all of these, boom, you now have a close to perfect bow. And I get a lot of these.
The attack speed cast damage over time.
Very, very difficult to craft yourself.
All damage from hits with this weapon can poison. Yeah, this is a nice bow.
Rug actually has a still rare just for damage that is actually as a.
It's a nice bow.
Pick stuff off the ground. I've seen some.
Yeah, you don't want green.
Where they
3 greens, 2 blues, and a red.
Divine budget for their league starter, and I'm like, the things. Well, depends. And
somewhere around there.
Clears really nice.
But also just generically.
Yeah, I was like, I was watching this in my car.
The Summon Raging Spirit
eating my lunch. I was not paying attention at all. So
construct and play League Starter builds currently in Path of Exile. It leverages the power of the Guardian's Unwavering Crusade notable to give its minions a level 27 Anger, Hatred, and Wrath aura all together, allowing us to focus most of our mana reservation on defenses. Speaking of which, by layering spell suppression, attack and spell block, lots of physical damage shifting, and very high life regeneration through the Time of Need passive, this is an incredibly sturdy build. Once fully constructed, it is effectively a one-button build that feels like a hybrid minion caster archetype that summons temporary, aggressive minions that seek out and destroy your enemies. It is solo self-found hardcore viable. I played up to level 88 in SSF hardcore this league just to test it out, and it thrives in all game modes. It is not a bossing-centric build, but at high enough investment, it can even scale into fighting Ubers. In fact, I was testing him on a league start budget, and I accidentally fought Uber Eater. It took a few portals, but I did down him on a league start budget, though I don't recommend doing that. Also, I'm very happy to announce that a complete written guide with full progression milestones, gear, checkpoints, everything will be on Maxroll very soon. It'll be published sometime this week, and also
this is a Maxroll guy
with Havoc 616 for a complete leveling
subtract them.
So look below in the description and pinned comment. They will show up as soon as they are available. All right, without further ado, enjoy.
I like the guys, the D4 guys on Maxroll are pretty good.
So this is the SRS Guardian. You've probably seen a lot of people talking about it. I've been playing it actually most of
needs to
this
be
league.
more
I first played it
content
about halfway
creators
through the
for
league.
that.
I just wanted to experience
Joey
early
on
League Start
Maxwell.
Guardian. That was my first experimentation with SRS Guardian was a couple months ago. And I was just blown away by how comfortable this build is, how just cohesive and how efficient it is to put everything together. So starting off, let's talk about the pieces that go into this build and just the general theory behind what's going on. So the first thing is, what is Summon Raging Spirit? So this is a minion skill that's a spell. It has the minion duration and fire tags, which is very useful for scaling our gear right here. And you will summon these skulls. I have the Celestial MTX, so they have little masks on, but it'll summon these little skulls that are by default already aggressive. They have a base physical damage that has a 100% conversion to fire built into the gem itself. Well, it's not on the gem, it's actually on the minion itself, which is also important for damage conversion purposes. You'll summon these little minions here, and they will just go out and destroy your enemies. And that's really the core of it. It's mostly a one-button build, although we do have some additional utility buttons that we do press. For comfort, we have it linked to Unleash support right here, although in the next patch, in the 3.23 patch, we might be able to drop Unleash once you get enough cast speed, because they're adding the new quality for SRS is changing from minion movement speed to 30% chance to summon an additional minion. So the main thing is you can have up to 20 SRS at a time. So you can see this is the Flaming Skull. It can go up to 20, and that's where it caps out. So no matter what, you can only have 20. You see them right here. And also they will go where your cursor is. So you can kind of aim them a little bit, and they will go towards wherever your cursor is, but they'll attack kind of any minion that they find along the way. And to make that a little bit more comfortable, we'll use Unleash here, which will actually kind of queue up a number of skulls. So you see this number 3 right here. That actually is the number of skulls that we'll cast when we use Unleash. It'll go up to 3 seals, and then it'll cast all 3 of them at once. The really nice thing about Unleash here is that less damage when reoccurring doesn't matter, because we're summoning a minion, we're not casting a spell that does damage. So there's actually no downside besides the fact that it's not a more damage multiplier. Then we have it linked to Elemental Focus, minion damage support, melee splash, and elemental damage with attacks. Obviously, we want to go into all of the awakened versions a little bit later. And then when we want to boss, do single target, anything like that, we replace melee splash with multi-strike. And then we can go into awaken minion damage, awaken multi-strike, awaken unleash. We do that to level up. So for gameplay, all we have to do is we're using shield charge and frostblink to get around, very standard. We're casting our summon raging spirits. They go off automatically. They target automatically. You don't even have to worry about aiming it. And then we also have a haste divine blessing. It makes us faster. It makes our minions faster. They attack faster. Now, in terms of the damage, as I mentioned in the intro, what is happening here is we have something called Unwavering Crusade. This is our second skill point that we take around level 50 to 55 when we do Cruel Lab. And it says 25% chance to trigger level 20 summon elemental relic when you or a nearby ally kill an enemy or hit a rare or unique enemy. So you also get uptime during bossing. These relics have a fairly short duration and they're pretty easy to kill. So they're going to die fairly often. But since you will have ideally 20 skulls out that are attacking and killing very, very quickly, you have a pretty reliable uptime of having these 3 minions. And we can demonstrate this pretty easily. Let's go into a map and then I can just show you the gameplay really quickly. All right, so if I just cast my SRS right here, they kind of just will fly out and target towards the enemies. No hands-on at all. And this is kind of like the comfortable thing where it feels a little bit like a caster because you are, assertively going out and actively casting your skills. You're actually summoning your minions actively. And they have a fairly short duration. Currently, mine lasts 8.2 seconds, which is not too bad. As you can see, I don't have to target the enemies. I just kind of go forward and cast my SRS, and they will do all of the rest of the work for me. The other stuff that we have, like I said, is we have Haste Divine Blessing, making them a little bit faster, makes us faster too. We also have Vol Haste to go even faster on top of that. Speeds us up, speeds our minions up, makes everything feel a lot smoother. And the one other button that you can press that is optional, once you get later on, you probably don't really want to press it too often, is the Sentinel of Radiance. This guy will carry you through leveling. So the leveling this build is arguably the easiest leveling in the entire game. Not the fastest, but I would say the easiest. The reason for that is he is very, very overtuned throughout the entire campaign. There's a bunch of clips of different streamers trying this for the first time. And I made, I think, 2 different videos on how overpowered this guy is this league. Everyone was calling for him to get nerfed, but yeah, I'm happy to say that he was not touched at all outside of Ruthless. He has an area of effect Righteous Fire effect that is based on his HP, and so he will do a burning effect to the minions around him. So if I just summon him and I don't even worry about my Righteous Fire, you can see that he can kind of, or my Raging Spirits if I don't summon them, you can see that he does quite a bit of work on his own. This is, no hand on the keyboard. I'm not summoning my my SRS at all. This is just his burning effect, and it's very big. You can see that it hits really, really hard. he will already carry you through T16 maps once you level up. He really is that powerful. Like, I don't have to do anything at all. The burning effect is nearly the entire screen in radius. And then his actual attack is really, really hard. He hits pretty hard. Now, he's not doing a ton of damage. I think in this configuration, he's around maybe 800,000 DPS, something like that. But in terms of making the
I was about
build
to say
very
800
comfortable to
million.
play, clearing up the stragglers of
Not
the
doing that
enemies,
much damage.
that's incredibly powerful.
Just
Not
melts
to
the
mention that he
screen.
will also taunt enemies, so he will just draw aggro for you. And while he's active, he has a passive effect to make you take 20% less damage from hits. So this is part of the reason why this build is so tanky, because this guy will take 20% of the hits for you. So that's
why I
already
wanna go.
just very comfortable defensively.
Yeah.
That is really all
I just want to be
that there
comfortable.
is
I don't
in
want to
terms of
like
playing this
go
build. All right, and then to go
balls
over
to
the
the
other mechanics
wall.
and skills that
I
we
want to
have,
see all. I
including
haven't seen
much
all
more
the
of our
content in the
minion
game yet
utility.
either.
Starting off, we
So
have
it'd
the
be
summon
nice to
carry
have something
golem,
that's like
which gives us additional physical
tanky and
damage
easy to
our
play.
SRS, which is really nice. And the real big thing that it gives us is feeding frenzy support and elemental army. So the elemental army, because he has the hatred, anger, and wrath, will apply exposure, so we get that. And then he also has feeding frenzy, which makes our minions do more damage and be faster. So he's a nice little utility minion. I have him on middle click right here because he will die periodically. He's not linked to anything defensive. He does have 26,000 life, so he doesn't die very often. But if it's in a very, very rippy map, I might have to resummon him.
The animate armor.
During a map.
I always
For our
could
mana
take here.
reservation, we are using Skitterbots, and then combined with that, we're using Profane Proxy. That gives us a shock on the enemies near us, as well as a reliable elemental weakness on all of our enemies. This way, we don't have to actively curse all of the time. And the other benefit here is that it gives us 40% reduced extra damage from critical strikes, because enemies will reliably be cursed all of the time. Then we have Tempest Shield. Since we have a decent amount of block already from our Bastion of Hope, if we've cast a spell recently, we have plus 25 spell block. Combined with our Tempest Shield, this gives us 50% spell block all the time, as well as shock immunity. Then we have Divine Blessing with haste. This works in combination with Eldritch Battery because it gives your auras a high mana cost for a temporary buff, which means we can periodically cast haste, and we get it for about 11 to 12 seconds right now in this configuration. We need enough available mana to be able to cast that, and the only way to do that is with Eldritch Battery, because normally we wouldn't have any mana after reserving any of our auras. The thing to pay attention to here is you do want to have a moderate amount of energy shield on your gear. You will value getting some energy shield on maybe some jewels, maybe your rings, stuff like that. Just a little bit of additional flat energy shield helps a lot, just to make sure that you can cast your haste. And around 600 energy shield is very comfortable for not really having to worry about that. Really high uptime of my aura right there. I'm currently running Grace. This is really personal preference. You can run Grace or Determination. With that said, Determination is actually much, much stronger with damage shifting, but I generally prefer to not get hit in the first place versus, you know, dealing with a small amount of hits that are hitting us. In our boots for utility, I'm using Immortal Call. If you want to, you can run Determination instead of Grace and run Molten Shell. This is entirely personal preference. The math is really, really close in POB. Set that up how you like. Running Determination with the Granite Flask, I get technically more EHP. But with Grace, I get like 30% more evasion, and just not getting hit in the first place is like really nice. I get 33% more evasion. Frostblink, Shield Charge, Faster Attacks, very standard setup right there. And then in our wand, we want to go for the Trigger Craft right here. You get this by unveiling weapons from Betrayal or June missions. This is a suffix that you can craft that is 4 chaos. And what it does is when you cast a spell, which we're doing all the time with our Frostblink and with our Raging Spirits, it will cast the spells in the wand itself. What we want here is Desecrate, which will summon some corpses. This will allow us to have a very high uptime of Flesh Offering, which gives our minions 30% movement, cast, and attack speed. And then we put our second curse in here, which is Punishment, which makes enemies take significantly increased damage below 50% life. Between Profane Proxy and the Trigger Wand right here, this dramatically reduces the buttons necessary to play this build. By default, as you can see, we have a lot of gems. There's potentially a lot of buttons to press. And until you get the Trigger Craft, it is kind of uncomfortable, but priority number one is get that Trigger Craft right away. Once you have that, this will automate all 3 of these buttons. Profane Proxy is another button. Dramatically reduces the buttons you have to press. And then last up is our Spectre and Animate Guardian setup. So Spectres are enemies that you have killed or, you know, coming from any corpses on the ground that you can summon. Not all enemies can be Spectres, but what we want to do is summon specific Spectres that give us boosts for our character and our Raging Spirits. So the 2 Spectres that we want to go for, I'll put them on the screen, are the Pale Seraphim and the Arena Master. The Pale Seraphim is from...
We're going to be able to raise... We have to go Warlock Mists. We'll be able to raise the Eldritch.
Beyond, it is a pain in the butt to get. Basically, what you have to do is have a corpse on the ground, and I'll demonstrate how to do this. we want to take Desecrate, and we want to take our Flesh Offering out too. We don't want to automatically be consuming the corpses. We want to put Desecrate in a different socket so we can actually cast it. You can't cast the ones that are triggered. So we cast our Desecrate right here, and this will actually put corpses on the ground. And then the default key is A. There's a key for corpse targeting. You actually have to have Race Spectre selected here. It has to be on your hotbar. And then by pressing A, you can see that the hitboxes are really goofy. But you basically hold down A, and then you can mouse over, and you can see at the top of the middle of the screen, it'll say the name of the corpse of the minion that you're going to spawn. And so the two that we want to spawn are the Pale Seraphim from Beyond and the Arena Master that comes from Drox maps. The Pale Seraphim, I believe, puts a debuff that makes enemy monsters take 15% increased damage. This stacks additively with the shock and with the punishment, so it's nice for additional damage taken. And then the Arena Master, he'll bang his shield and do this AoE buff, which will grant attack, cast, and movement speed buff to you and your minions. He's not that hard to get. He, like I said, he just shows up in Drox maps. You can just kill him, and just, whenever you kill a pack of monsters, just kind of hold A and try to find it on the screen. But the Pale Seraphim will disappear very quickly. The Beyond monsters, their corpses go away after just a couple seconds. So you're kind of killing a pack of monsters, holding A, and then you're hoping you see it right away. That's super clunky and annoying. Unfortunately, this is the downside of playing minion builds. I didn't explain it very well in the original recording. So by default, your Desecrate pool right here, when you use Desecrate, will pretty much just have skeletons. To get the Pale Seraphim and to get the Arena Master in your pool, you actually have to go to a map or get it from someone else's Desecrate pool. So you go into a map, you find the Pale Seraphim, you create that Spectre, and then when you go back into your hideout, it will then be locked into your Desecrate pool. And then once you have it, in the future, when your Spectres die, you can go back to your hideout, Desecrate, and resummon the Spectres, or do it in the zone that you went into, the map that you went into. People that already have it in their Desecrate pool, you can go to their hideout, they'll Desecrate for you. You can summon the Spectre yourself, maybe give them a 5 or 10 chaos tip. Then when you go back to your hideout, it will then be in your Desecrate pool. It can be a little funky. Sometimes you can lose a minion from Desecrate pool if you, I don't know all the mechanics. I'm not an expert on this, but if you summon a bunch of other Spectres, there's definitely a limit. You get a bunch of different minions in there. You log out, you log back in, and then you lost your Pale Seraphim, you lost your Arena Master, and then that can be a pain in the butt. But you can see right here, this is the Pale Seraphim. It is a pale spider-like looking monster. And then the Arena Master are these little these soldier guys that have some shields, and their little buff that they do, they'll slam the shield with their sword, and that'll do a 20% attack, move, and cast speed buff to you and your minions for about 3 or 4 seconds. So it's not 100% uptime, but it's a really nice boost for your character. Quick edit, I'm about to talk about joining Global Channel 6666. I mistyped in the original recording,
the devil.
But you can join Global Chat 6666 to join the minion sharing community for getting your Spectres. All right, back to the video. This is actually the channel where a lot of minion folk hang out. You can go in there and talk to people and ask.
But chat with me on Discord.
You can give them like a 5-10 chaos tip if you want to.
Not right now.
And yeah, great
maybe later.
People that are just helping each other out. Everyone that plays minions.
I'm trying to figure out what my league start's gonna be.
This is a very comfy build, but there are definitely annoying parts. They like to help each other out, and it's pretty cool to be part of a community with people helping each other out and all that. And then next up in the
I'll add you.
is the Anime Guardian. So this is the guy nicknamed Bob. You can see him right here. He's kind of an additional player. So he has his own inventory. He's actually animated gear.
Well,
as you can see, Discord he has a Dying Breath. He has just a regular rare body armor. He has a Leer cast on. He has regular gloves, and I have him with the Maven Legacy of Fury boots. So he is basically animated gear, and he will follow you around. He will grant the buffs. He's like an additional player. He's like an additional party member that will grant the buffs of the gear that he's wearing to your entire party. We have him equipped with the Dying Breath, which is a little bit increased damage and curse damage, as well as curse effectiveness. The Legacy of Fury are really nice for Scorch Ground effect. Those are just nice to have. You get that a little bit later once they become available and cheap. And then the gloves, ideally, we give him the Southbound gloves, which gives him a lot more life. And then the body armor, the easiest thing to do is just a nice defensive body armor with increased life on it. Try to get some chaos res on there. Chaos damage is going to be kind of a scary thing. Just get his res up, make him nice and comfy, and he won't die at all during maps. So what you actually have to do is drop the gear on the ground and sock it in your Anime Guardian. There will be nothing, right? So you actually have to cast him. If you cast him on no gear, nothing will happen. So you don't have him. But if you cast it on an item, it will consume the item, go on his inventory, and that will be what he is. He is the gear that you animate. I right click on this gear right here, and you'll see that it will get consumed. Yeah, also he only uses melee weapons, so he can't use wands. That was a little mistake that I made.
No wands.
But you'll see that there is now a floating body armor, and that's my Anime Guardian. And any buffs that body armor bestows, that's his gear. Now, if he dies, you lose the gear. There's a craft to save a body armor, but We don't really care about that. If he dies, you'll lose the gear. So the recommended gear that I'm giving you guys is the cheapest stuff possible. Like I said, Southbounds, Dying Breath, Leer Cast, stuff like that. Legacy Fury is good for a little bit later, but even those, the price goes down very, very quickly and they become a lot cheaper. But don't worry about that even early on. Just give them some rare boots. Later on, of course, you can go for a Kingmaker, all of that. We're not really worried about that in a League Start guide. All right, so we have our Animate Guardian.
How squishy are those
Spectre,
things?
we have our
I've never
Carrion
run them.
Golem, we have our Skitterbots, and like I said, we have our Sentinel of Radiance, and we have all of
Sentinel Radiance, the Skitterbots, the skulls, animate armor, fucking everything.
As you can see, is a minion build. It's an active minion build. We have a bunch of utility minions.
Funny.
And that is the core of all the pieces,
Raise corpse,
all the skills,
animate
all the gems,
corpse,
and how they work together. So regarding the gear, what we're going to do today is I'm just going to show you very simple League Start gear and a couple of things that you can shoot
like
for
Skitterbots.
upgrades.
Skitterbots.
But we're not going to go into very, very high end. Starting
They
with
make themselves
the wand
into
right here. This is your general basic
way
wand
into
that you
some
wanna
other
start
builds
with.
too.
Let me reference the Maxwell build guide right now. So the primary stuff that scales our build. How do we get more damage? So we want to be going for increased minion damage, gem levels, and ghastly eye jewels with flat physical damage on them. Also attack speed from our minions, making them faster, attack faster. So our basic wand that we would go for, we use an essence of fear. Fear essences and bound fossils are going to be your best friend. So fear right here, you can see on guaranteed on a wand, we can get 94% increased minion damage on a wand. You want to start with a convening wand, the minion base type, so it has that minions deal increased damage on the implicit, and I went for +1 minion skill gems. But if instead I hit minions have attack speed, something like that, that would be nearly as good. So those are the main things that we're going for. Again, damage, minion skill gems, and we can also go for +1 fire. And then we always want to have an open suffix for that trigger craft. As you can see, this is an upgraded version. This is my more endgame one. I grabbed a fractured base, I hit it with essences until I hit tier 3 attack and cast speed, crafted the trigger, and that's the upgraded version that you want to shoot for. You know, even better, higher tiers of all that. Ideal wand would be +1 minion, +1 fire, minion damage, tier 1 attack and cast speed, etc. That's your GG wand. This is basically your starter wand that you want to be aiming for ASAP. And then going with that, we want to go for a spirit shield that has the minion increased damage on it. And then we want to go for minion skill gem level as well as minion damage. Minion life is kind of nice to have, and minion crit does nothing. Life is nice to have. You can also craft spell suppression on the suffix if you have that openness out of the life. Just very simple shield. Bound fossils are going to be your friend if you're an SSF. That's the way you want to craft it. Just bound fossil, bound fossil, bound fossil. That is the only way to influence and have more chance to get minion modifiers. Some minion modifiers will have like speed on it, so you can reforge speed, something like that. Bound fossils are going to be your best friend for crafting. I have the most basic amulet of all time on right now because this is just the League Start guide. But the ideal amulet is actually, again, +1 all level, +1 fire gem level, stuff like that. That's what you're going to aim for. But this is just your starter basic amulet, just some stats.
Resistant
and then we're
life.
going to anoint Inveterate, which gives us 15% chance to suppress spell damage, and then +3% suppress spell damages. If you're an SSF and you don't really have access to a gold oil anytime soon, I would recommend for something like Quick Step to just get that spell suppression chance up ASAP. Ring is just a life and res ring, nothing special. The non-channeling craft is really nice, not necessary. As you can see, my mana sustain is really, really good, so I don't need that at all. Like I said at the beginning, a little bit of energy shield goes a long way. I do recommend that just to make it more comfortable to keep your divine blessing up. Boots, just regular stat boots. Ideally, we would have spell suppression on these, but these are just, you know, League Start Rod crafted boots. I like life regen rate and action speed. You could go for Scorched Ground if you want to do that before Legacy of Fury. Give yourself a little bit more damage, but that also requires you to run underneath the enemy. It's a little weird because
This
of
spell suppression.
out, so you know, I think the Scorched Ground is kind of silly.
I think you have like
you can do that if you really wanna
75%
get
in
back
this
to
anyways.
Gloves, very simple. Spell suppression, life, res, just the standard go-to. On the implicits, we want to go for spell suppression and minion damage. And
not
the
spell
helmet
suppression,
is the same
but
story as well. We want to go for spell suppression, life. We want to have the Corel helmet craft. This is a Corel prefix. You get that from unveiling helmets from Corel-based helmets in June and Betrayal. Then we also want to go for physical damage from hits taken as fire, and minions have increased movement speed. So you could go for Elemental Weakness Curse Effect, something like that. However, next league, we are losing the minion movement speed from quality. Minion movement speed is really nice to have just for quality of life of your Raging Spirits kind of going all over and hitting everything. Like I said before, Profane Proxy with our curse in it is just really nice to have. Reducing the buttons required to play the build, strongly, strongly recommend. And then Lightning Coil, I think, is just way too good. I know some people were making arguments for going more armor-based, but I did the math in POB, and just 50% physical taken as lightning. This turns out being 37% flat less physical damage taken. I was not able to get to the same PDR, the same Physmax hit, going into armor for the same investment as I could with just a lightning coil. Between the lightning coil
almost
and the
harder to
physical
get all the
damage taken
armor,
on our
too.
helmet, and then later on a taste of hate, we can basically totally ignore any other physical damage. And if you want to juice that up even higher, you can go into a Dawnbreaker, etc.
Oh, he's wearing his like beginner gear too. He's got his like
20,
end game
25K
gear in his
Physmax hit,
inventory.
you absolutely can. Dawnbreaker with a ruby flask as well. And the really nice thing about the lightning coil is it is a unique that is pretty common. If we look at the historical price data, lightning
not
coil
that
peaked
expensive.
at 10 chaos this entire league. So it's really not a problem. It's really, really easy to get body armor. It's a little annoying to farm an SSF. I've done it. You can use the Coming Storm right here, which drops in these maps. Just look it up on the wiki. It is 8 cards to get. It could take you a few days in SSF to farm, but it is just way too good in my opinion.
Or
And
you can spend
the
8
benefit
chaos.
is you can start corrupting them. Once it gets down to 10, 20 chaos, you just keep buying them, keep corrupting them until you get something like plus level of socketed minion gems. You can also get plus level of socketed duration gems. So there's 2 different implicits that you can go for, and it's a very cheap and easy way to get a nice power boost.
Wow,
You know,
plus
a couple
2
weeks into the
level of
league,
socket
once the
minion.
price
How
goes
much is
way
that
down on
fucking
lightning
thing?
coils. Okay, and I've been waiting for this one last because
Jeez.
this kind of goes into our final scaling stage for the build. And that is scaling Ghastly Eye Jewels with flat physical damage and minion attack speed on them every single where that we can get it. So the big thing that we want to go for here is a Darkness Enthroned. So this is an 82% roll one that I just got out of a Voidborn Reliquary key that I opened up. You can see that the roll is between 50 and 100% increased effect of socketed Abyss Jewels. So what this does is it can give you up to double, so this is a perfectly roll one, up to double of the effect of what's in there. So for example, this says plus 10 strength and dexterity. In this one, it would actually give me plus 20 strength and dexterity.
It's a
And you can
100%
have 2 of them. So for example, I have one that has 50% chance to avoid being shocked. In here, this already gives me 100% chance to avoid being shocked. I could just drop in a Storm Shroud and fully ailment immune just like that. And that's the power of the Darkness Enthroned. Now, price of a perfectly rolled Darkness Enthroned is high. I think I bought this for 10 divines just a few weeks ago. Perfectly rolled one will always be pretty expensive.
Yeah.
However, you can just
I was gonna say that's
run
pretty
Abyss,
expensive.
and it drops pretty
For a league start.
reliably, fairly often when you do get the Abyssal Lich. So if you just put the points into, if you're an SSF, you want to go for the points right here for additional chance for Abyssal Depth. Just run Abyss, and pretty much most of the time when you fight the Lich down there, you'll get a Darkness
And
Enthroned. It's a
divine,
very
or you
high
can
drop
completely
rate.
gear
And
out
you
your
can get
entire
everything from 50
character.
to 100% roll. Higher is the better. And then the jewels that we're looking for here are primarily minions deal additional physical damage. The higher the roll on the additional physical damage, the better. The reason for this is because, again, we have Hatred, Anger, and Wrath. Remember, they have base physical damage, and the Hatred will get that 15% Fizz as extra cold, and then we're scaling that cold damage, you know, because Hatred double dips and is cheating. However, any flat damage at all is good. You know, primarily we do prefer elemental damage, so even flat lightning damage is fine. We are scaling minion damage kind of generically. The other mod that's really nice is this one right here. Minions deal increased damage if you've used a minion skill recently. You've always used one recently because you're always casting your Summon Raging Spirits. So even a jewel like this has flat fire, flat lightning, and increased damage recently. This is a great jewel as well. The 2 mods that you're really prioritizing, flat physical damage, increased damage if it used recently, and then the other flat elemental is fine. You know, the chaos is okay, but you don't really care about that as much. And yeah, that's generally what you're going to be going for on the jewels. And that's kind of our main scaler, actually. Once you have the minion skill levels, the minion increased damage on your gear, the only real other way to scale it is pushing those Ghastly Eye Jewels as high as possible. And that's what you're going to go for. So you're going to go for a higher roll Darkness Enthroned. You're going to get those jewels in there, and you're good to go. Oh yeah, in terms of helmet, remember, there's no helmet enchants next league, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. And yeah, we don't know about alternate quality gems or whatever, transfigured gems. We don't know about those at all. So
boot
don't worry about
enchants too,
those.
right?
Although they did show transfigured animate guardian that has smite, which would be very, very good. Do recommend that, because that smite will do an AoE plus lightning damage to all of your minions. So, you know, grab that one if you can. All right, next up in terms of flasks, I recommend a Divine Life Flask.
Oh, you
of
saw the
moving
transfigured
bleed.
one.
Later on, you do want to get a Corrupted Blood Ghastly Eye Jewel, but until you get that, you know, this is your bleed removal as well. Topaz Flask, really, really good in combination with the Lightning Coil. This actually provides not only additional less physical damage taken effectively, right, because we're shifting it to lightning damage, but also just generically less lightning damage taken, which is really good for those stupid donut monsters. Quartz Flask for phasing, a little bit more spell suppression is nice to have. Jade Flask with increased evasion, as well as a Quicksilver Flask with increased movement speed. And then obviously, increased effective movement speed would be better as well. For a stretch goal later on, you want to get a Taste of Hate, ideally with a perfect 15% physical damage from hits taken as cold damage. This will increase the amount of physical damage that we are shifting. So our big defensive layer here for physical damage is we are shifting the initial physical damage to elemental, and then that will go against our elemental resistance. And the more that we can shift, the less actual physical damage is hitting our armor or whatever is the layer behind that. And then you can stack that with even more flat fizz taken on your Pantheon, flat fizz on a shield, even more shifting if you want a Dawnbreaker, and you can become very, very strong against physical damage. That's our nice little segue into the defenses. So we'll start off with the physical damage. That is primarily, as I just said, all of this physical damage shifting. And then behind that physical damage, we can actually boost that even more by running Determination instead of Grace. Like I said earlier, I prefer to just take fewer hits in the first place, but if you want to just ensure that your Fizz max hit is a little bit better, you can run Determination instead. Against spells, we have chance to suppress spell damage. On our helmet, boots, and gloves, ideally we want to get as much spell suppression as we can, up to 14% chance, but that can be kind of hard to hit. It's actually easier to roll it on pure evasion base. You can Rogcraft, whatever, just try to get some spell suppression on your gear. Ideally, you would get to 100%. So you
I
can
didn't
see
know it
right
was
here,
easy
I have
to roll on
66%, but we have this
pure
mastery right here
evasion
that says
gear.
chance to suppress spell damage is lucky, which is if you play D&D, it's rolling with advantage. It will roll twice and take the better roll. So we can see mathematically, let's turn off my Quartz Flask right here. If I turn off the Lucky Mastery in POB, my gear's a little bit different in POB, but you can see I have 60% chance to suppress spell damage. But if I take the Mastery, roll with advantage, that 60 goes to 84%. And if I turn on my Quartz Flask, it actually gets even better, and it goes up to 91% effective chance. That's the mathematical probability curve of how much I'm actually suppressing my spell damage. Now, obviously, I would prefer 100%, and next patch, we can actually get that a lot easier with the new jewels that they showed off with the new Ascendancies. And that spell suppression, in addition to our 56% spell block, actually feels pretty darn comfortable. Granted, yeah, you can get really unlucky and a very big hit could come through, but we have a decent max hit, and I'm not too worried about that outside of, if you take a huge uber hit or something, right? If we just added a little bit more spell suppression on our gear, we could get very close to 100%. And then you're very, very comfortable. And then Pantheons, Brine King, this gives us our freeze immunity, really good to also not get stun locked. And then either Abrath or Growthcool are both perfectly good. Less physical damage taken is great, slowing them down a little bit, or just you need that Burning Ground immunity if you're doing Red Altars, so obviously you know about that. All right, in terms of the passive tree right here, it is a very, very standard passive tree. The POB, I have a leveling tree right here. We do recommend leveling with Rolling Magma. I did test leveling with SRS, and you can do that if you want to. It was really fine, actually, during the regular encounters, but the bossing, it just didn't have the damage to make the bosses too comfortable until you got your Ascendancy. However, once you get your first Ascendancy, you get the Radiant Crusade notable. Kind of doesn't matter what you're doing. And I recommend around level 30, once you get Enduring Bond right here, this makes your minions last 20% longer. This helps a lot. Also gives them a lot more damage, increased skill duration. Once you get Enduring Bond, recommend swapping over to SRS. We have a drop down right here for SRS swap. So Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then swapping over to SRS right here, and then the final skill setup right here. Like I said, I recommend Rolling Magma. It just feels way too good. Like, Zaro was not fun with SRS. If he had all the extra minions that he summoned, it'll just make your whole life easier until you get your Radiant Crusade. Once you get that, once you get Enduring Bond, swap over to SRS. And the nice thing about this is the rest of the time, you're just building out the same utility, the same bits and pieces. There's nothing new. There's no curveballs happening. You're just like, okay, now Carrion Golem's unlocked, Unleash is unlocked in Act 4, grab those. But you're just putting additional pieces onto what you already have. Skill tree is very standard. You're going to basically zip right over to Spiritual Aid ASAP. This will give you a really nice minion damage boost. And then once you swap over to SRS, you're going to swap out of Spiritual Aid, fill up on the right side Righteous Armory. You're going to unspec Light of Divinity. And then the rest of the way, you're just kind of filling this out. Take these masteries. These masteries are pretty much mandatory, particularly this accuracy rating. The Convocation cooldown rate, you can use Convocation on left click. Your big Radiant Sentinel will just follow you around and just kill the whole screen. Put Convocation on left click. You're going to unspec that later because we don't use Convocation later on. And then you want to go for Grave Pact, fill out these nodes right here, and then finally go up to Eldritch Battery. It allows you to run your Haste Divine Blessing. And that is it. Other notable thing is switch Melee Splash with Multi-Strike for your single target. And then once you've decided that you've exhausted everything you want to do in like a solo self-found, don't want to do Cluster Jewels type of setup, then we do want to go into some Cluster Jewels that provide a lot of value for this build. And to do that, I do recommend getting out of these nodes over here. What this does is it frees up a lot of points. This brings me down to level 79. And then we want to put a large cluster jewel right here. I recommend just doing an 8 passive large cluster jewel. Some people do a full 12 passive minion, 35% increased effect, attack and cast speed. Yeah, if you want to super min-max it, but it's really not necessary. Then what you want to do is get a medium cluster jewel. This is the whole reason why we're doing it. On the large cluster jewel, increased damage, attack and cast speed, whatever, a little bit of life, some res. Those are always good to have. You don't really care about what you roll on here. Renewal's nice to have, chance for double damage. All we're doing this for is to get to Blessed Rebirth. Minions get 20% increased life, but also minions created recently cannot be damaged. That's 4 seconds for your Summon Raging Spirits to not take any damage after you summon them. This is so much quality of life if you're fighting, you know, a ton of degen on the ground and just all this AoE effect and everything. Keeps your minions alive, and it's way easier to sustain your 20 Raging Spirits. Strongly recommend. Dread March is also really good. There's a bunch of other medium cluster jewel ones that are really good. So, you know, anything that says minion damage, anything like that's good to have. Dread March is really nice because it also gives chaos res to your Animate Guardian, you know, keep him alive a little bit better. Also 10% PDR. And then in these jewel sockets, again, we just put this minion fizz damage. Just get a little bit more of these fizz damage jewels, and you'll notice that my damage went from, I think I was at 3.8 million DPS, and now I'm at 4.8 million DPS. So, you know, 25% more damage by going into a cluster jewel setup without losing too much defense. And this is kind of your final setup that you want to go into. And the build is basically put together. From here, you just want to go for more minion levels. You can go for +2 minion level on your helmet. I may have missed mentioning that. Oh yeah, on the helmet. Ideally, it's really hard to hit. Spring for a fractured version or even non-fractured and craft the rest of the helmet up. +2 level of minion skill gems is really good. You know, +1 is really easy to get. That's kind of your interim one. And then you can go for +2, Perfect Darkness Enthroned, Better Wand. Then you can go for a double Corrupted Lightning Coil, +2 minion, +2 duration. All of that. You can shoot for the stars. And
Jesus.
like I said, this build does scale, you know, Awakened Gems, get all the Awakened Gems like this. The build does scale into being able to kill Ubers. And also, benefit, let's go over the tiny little changes that I recommend for 3.23 Affliction League. So first off is we probably don't need Unleash. Summon Raging Spirit actually is getting a new quality that is the old Helmet Chant. So the old Helmet Chant was 24% chance to summon an additional Raging Spirit. This is actually going to go to 30% at 20% quality on the gem itself, which means that, you know, the reason why we're using Unleash is we're trying to maintain those 20 Raging Spirits at once. But if we can sustain that without using the Unleash gem, well, we get an additional damage link. And that will give us about 30% more damage. The easiest gem to put in there would be something like Ruthless. Yeah, it looks like Ruthless is actually our best gem that you can put in. And as you can see, I go from 4.8 million DPS to 6.4 million DPS. And remember, this is with absolute, you know, league start gear. And so we can scale this a lot higher. We can very easily get over 10 million DPS with this build. And it gets very comfortable. So I think we'll probably be dropping Unleash. I think you still want Unleash early on, but you'll probably drop that later. Instead of going for Awaken Unleash, you'll just go for Ruthless once you get 20% quality. And the other thing is we haven't seen all of the charms yet, but this one has
Ruthless
really
doesn't
excited.
give you
This
probably
is the
30%.
Pathfinder's Bluebind Charm of the Raider. If you don't know, there are 3 new ascendancies that you can pick, and one of them is the Wildwood.
Oh no, it is
Primalist,
about 30%, I guess.
3 sockets in it, so
Go
all sorts of
4.5
wacky
to
stuff is
6.
going to happen. But it has 3 sockets in it that give you the ability to put in these charms that have the effects of other ascendancies. So you get like baby versions of the other ascendancies. Just looking at this, you can see how strong this is. We get 3 of these. I think this one's going to be really expensive and hard to get, but they are tradable. You can buy them. 3 of these, 27% chance to suppress spell damage. Boom, we're at 100%. And then Magic Utility Flasks applied have 15% increased effect. 45% stronger Topaz and Ruby Flasks, making that shifted damage way stronger. So just looking at this, I think being able to equip 3 of these is going to be incredibly powerful, and that's what you're going to want to be looking for. You know, something like this. On League Start, I'm going to play this build. I will have daily videos on everything that I discover, all of my findings, so you can follow along with me. You know, get subscribed if you want, all of that stuff.
Huh?
I'm really excited to League Start this build. I think that's a good place. I think we're basically wrapped up right now. I don't think there's anything that I missed off the top of my head. The key with this build is that it kind of just works. You know, as long as you follow the absolute basics, you don't even have to do it perfectly. As long as you follow the absolute basics, you just level it up normally. As soon as you swap to SRS, you get the Radiant Sentinel out right here. He will, it literally feels like cheating. He will carry you through the acts. This is a really strong league starter. There's a reason why everyone's recommending it, and I'm really happy to play it myself and share with you guys this build guide. And just as a little bit of a teaser, here's a little bit of my written guide on max roll. It's got a lot of detail. It's really, really long. I spent like 12 hours on it. So it's got everything that you could want.
I did put it on max roll.
This video is really just meant to be complimentary to that written guide. If you have any other questions, please check there first. Hopefully everything that you could want is answered. And if not, let me know in the comments below, and I will fill it out in a pinned comment below, and I will update the max roll guide and make sure it has all of the knowledge that we need in it, so that you guys can have the best league start that you've ever had. That's my goal. Every league, I want you guys to just have better and better league starts, and this one's a doozy. I love my Frostwing Elementalist. It's incredibly fun to play, but in terms of just being really, really just defensively oriented and scale with 0 gear, this build's pretty special. I gotta get to editing this video.
Holy looking at the fuck, it must have took him forever to edit this.
So I hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for watching this long, and I can't wait to see you guys on League Start.
Get a good one. Ah! Ah! I don't remember this one. Oh yeah, this one's alright. Has some like OSTs. Doom style. Yobi is updating. Which Wildwood Ascendancy are you most excited for? Warlock of the Mist. What's the Warden one? Is that the Magi? Wildwood? That's the one with the charms. Why is my mouse like skipping around? There's like too much metal and shit interfering. Or maybe. Maybe I need to get a wired mouse. This one's not that bad though. Fuck is Twink leveling? Oh, maybe it's not up here yet. This is SRS Sorcerer. Poison one. Where's the one where he has the wood sockets socketed out? I guess this listed as final with the jewel setup. What I wanted to look at. Really just for Blessed Rebirth, huh? 20% increased maximum life. Minions recently cannot be damaged. Increased life, movement speed, physical damage reduction, chaos resistance. Additional cold damage, accuracy rating. Full damage, accuracy. It's life damage. Yeah, it's just more damage from the minion. Life. Quality of life stuff. So you don't really need the 12 one. Eldritch battery. This isn't gonna be about melee multi-strike for bosses. I really like squeezes all the once all these unset right, huh? Sheet TPS doesn't calculate. Does it calculate the all the minions? No, just the raging spirits. Whoa, camera. Camera. There's not enough light on me? There we go. It's too dark. $12,000 life. I thought he wasn't doing, what was the skill he was subbing out? He was putting Ruthless in for...
And remember, this is with absolute, you know, league start gear. And so we can scale this a lot higher. You can very, very easily get over 10 million.
Oh shit, here they said it.
More damage. But 8% is getting a deep yes. That's, you know, league start gear. And so we can...
I think it's a Ruthless
probably drop that later instead of going for a...
Instead of Unleash. So like this, and it's not gonna be multi-strike, it's gonna splash that. But that's a like red to red swap is not bad, whatever, you know. But when you do go for the 6th link, I'm gonna want three blue, 3 red. Instead of 4 blue, 2 red. That shouldn't be too hard. Getting 50-50, 3 red, 3 blue, that's pretty easy. As long as there's no fucking greens mixed in here. Three blues, rainbow. Val haste. Blue, blue, red. Go with the red. These are in the rings. I don't have to have element weakness. Trigger a socket spell when you use a skill. 8-second cooldown. Spells trigger this way have 150% more cost. That's like cool. You don't even need plus minion. For league start, I guess you don't need plus one to socketed, not even on the helmet. +2. Just rolling magma, right? Okay, with the elemental proliferation. Deep slam with momentum. Holy flame totem. Okay. There's SRS swap, what, Act 4? You can get that golem. It's just rolling magma with holy flame. Okay. Shouldn't be too bad. I kind of figure out what I'm gonna do now. A little research, getting a little ready. Really dislike rolling magma. I just want to level with your endgame skill you told again. Just know the act 1 to be a little bit slower. 2 would be significantly slower. Just do the holy flame totem. It's pretty easy. Easy to get the early specters or charger. Carnage Chieftain, Ape in the Old Fields in Act 2 for Frenzy Chargers and the Wild Bristle Matron. Purple Spiky Bear, Defensive Spectre from Vivid Encounters. Do do.
I'm really excited by Path of Exile right now. You might have seen in some of my previous videos that I went into the game in the last league fully blind, and I did my reviews not really understanding the game, understanding builds, and just sort of trying to make my own way in the universe through Path of Exile, and I enjoyed it significantly. However,
my screen is
one
tearing.
of the things I realized while doing my reviews and sort of interacting with the community and trying to understand the game is that Path of Exile is a game based upon incremental knowledge, where every league you come back to the game with your previous baseline of knowledge and you build upon it. Now, since it was my first league, that was part of the experience of Path of Exile that I never got to actually experience. And that effectively the game was something like this. You have fun, you have time, and the game will continually get more and more and more fun as you have more and more and more time within Path of Exile. This time also could correlate with knowledge. You could call this knowledge as well, and it would be pretty close to the same thing. In fact, what's really interesting, if you actually pull up the Google trends of how popular this game is in terms of search patterns and people really just looking for data on the game, it looks like a very similar graph Here is what the search term for PoE basically since 2010
you
looks
went
like.
Kermit there
It is
for a little bit.
slow increase of interest over time.
I like
it
Darth
actually slowly has
microtransactions.
been ramping. This is very contrary to what a lot of games, and I'm not just talking about ARPGs. We're trying to take shots at Diablo franchise here. I'm really talking about games in general. Very often these trends look like a massive spike, and then they slowly bleed out over time. You can pick almost any game, you know, except things like Minecraft and Fortnite, and you're really looking at very similar looking graphs. But PoE actually has a different style where it is slowly ramping as people build interest every single league and come back to the game, having
DPS is
more
ramping.
enjoyability on the next league. There is one interesting bit of data. If you
Ramping?
actually swap
Ramping?
this term to Path of Exile, what you're going to notice is that terminology actually does spike and then continue to go down, much in like the way I was just referring. Well, why would this go down while PoE interest goes up? That is because people who play the game stay with the game, learn the terminology, and they're going from searching Path of Exile to searching for PoE. AKA, every time Path of Exile gets a spike of players with a new expansion or
Oh
something.
my god, I
like that,
just fucking know. Look at this. G Fuel. G Fuel up the ass with like, what is that? Is that a cognac? He mixing cognac and G Fuel? G Fuel? Is that how he gets this awesome hair? Fuck.
a good amount of those people end up staying, learning the terminology, and that baseline of how many people are actively playing Path of Exile is only going up over time. And this search term is one such way to see that. And I'm starting to understand why. Having just played last league as my first experience in Path of Exile, when I saw this, the Affliction expansion being announced, and I saw how many changes there are, even though, and I say even though, there is plenty of content in the game I've never even seen. There's bosses I have never killed. There's experiences I have yet to acquire. Seeing the consistent amount of changes that will come and the new content being added into the game gives me encouragement to come back and try the game with the new season. Remember that fun graph over the time that looks like this as your knowledge increases? When these season leagues come out, you get this big spike of enjoyability. So it ends up looking like this, because right around here, when this new season comes out,
it's
I get to
plateaued at the
take all
top
of my
there,
previous
sir.
time/knowledge that I have developed over the last league and apply it directly to the new content. And this spike gets bigger and
The
bigger
slope approach
every
is
time a
zero,
new league comes out.
but never
AKA
gets
your
to zero.
knowledge is ramping, which makes your enjoyability ramp as well. To give you an example about what I'm talking about, I'm going to show you a clip from when I was reacting to the trailer launch of the next expansion. They're randomly generated stats. Wait, you say from other ascendancy. Wait, hold on. I'm trying. My brain's trying.
You do this with charms that you can buy.
Yeah, there's ascendancies on ascendancies.
Charms have randomly generated dots, which gives.
And then you can socket the ascendancy.
Regular ascendancy classes, but he didn't say your regular